With innovative 5G-powered technology, preventive maintenance on the track and the ability to react faster to obstructions is possible. Our solution consists of a system of rotating drones wirelessly connected to the driving train that acts as a charging, connectivity, and data processing platform. The drones scan the tracks and infrastructure ahead of the train at a distance equal to the safe braking distance of the train. Inside the cabin, the train driver has a visual video stream of the track ahead, overlaid with warning information produced by artificial intelligence. This way, the driver can better evaluate the oncoming situation and take proactive measures such as reducing speed or braking. On top of this, for very high-risk situations, the AI system can automatically initiate an emergency brake. The ambition is to bring to market a full end-to-end solution, including custom installation, hardware and software licenses, and an SLA agreement. We are flexible when it comes to commercial models, CAPEX, OPEX, or a percentage of cost saving calculated by a reduction in the number and severity of incidents. If your train stops on time, it's because our drone is ahead of its time.
Prišla je revolucija. Več 3.0, več prenosa podatkov, neomejeni klici, sporočila in 5G hitrosti v vseh mobilnih paketih več. Vse to za vse uporabnike. Čas je za boljši mobilni paket. Čas je za lahko odločitev. Čas je za več. Telemach.
Cenjene dame, spoštovani gospodje, dear guests and of course esteemed lecturers, dobro jutro. Moje ime je Vesna Sodnik in bom vaša današnja gostiteljica. Naj vam dobrodošlico na hibridnem dogodku Priložnosti 5G omrežja za poslovne uporabnike zaželim kar z mislijo ameriškega podjetnika, avtorja odprtokodnega spletnega orodja WordPress, Matta Mullenwega. Izjavil je, da je tehnologija najboljša takrat, ko združuje ljudi. Današnje hibridno druženje je zagotovo dokaz prednosti sodobne tehnologije v času, ko bi zaradi številnih zdravstvenih ali logističnih razlogov nekatere dejavnosti povsem obstale. Hkrati je današnji dogodek tudi odlična priložnost, da s strokovnjaki razblinimo še zadnja odprta vprašanja povezana z uvajanjem tehnologije 5G v poslovne sisteme in družbo kot tako, saj, kot boste izvedeli danes, s svojimi številnimi prednostmi ponuja neslutene možnosti razvoja. Enovito omrežje bi med drugim omogočalo, da končno v resnici zaživijo ideje o telemedicini, pametni logistiki in mobilnosti, vsem dostopnemu izobraževanju in povezanih mestih in podeželju. Prve drzne korake, ki tlakujejo pot v boljšo prihodnost za vse nas, že delajo tudi naši današnji gostje. Prav zato bomo danes spregovorili o konkretnih primerih in rešitvah iz prakse. In nova generacija mobilnih omrežij prinaša predvsem poslovnim uporabnikom neslutene priložnosti. Seveda pa dobrobiti novih tehnoloških priložnosti izboljšujejo življenja prav vsakemu izmed nas. Kaj nas torej čaka danes do 14? Najprej bomo izvedeli nekaj o novostih v tehnologiji 5G in kakšno je trenutno stanje v Evropi. Sledi pa pregled praktičnih primerov iz telekomunikacije, logistike in industrije. Za konec pa še pika na i, oziroma če hočete, črta na G, okrogla miza, na kateri bodo gostje predstavili trenutne trende in priložnosti za razvoj novih rešitev, ki jih omogoča tehnologija 5G. Preden pa čisto zares zaplujemo v današnje vsebine, pa še nekaj uvodnih besed generalnega direktorja Direktorata za informacijsko družbo z Ministrstva za javno upravo, gospoda Petra Jenka. Gospod Jenko, izvolite.
Dober dan, dobro jutro, lepo pozdravljeni vsi skupaj. Dovolite, da vas pozdravim tudi v imenu Ministrstva za javno upravo in v imenu Direktorata za informacijsko družbo. Hvala tudi organizatorjem za priložnost za tale kratek uvodni pozdrav. Zdaj verjamem, da smo tule prisotni nekako enotni v prepričanju, da je povezljivost ključnega pomena. To seveda najprej velja za našo medsebojno povezljivost. Tisti, ki pa imamo mogoče bolj izraženo afiniteto do novih tehnologij, pa imamo v mislih predvsem povezljivost komunikacijskih omrežij. Zdaj, kako ključna je ta povezljivost, nam je pokazalo obdobje preteklega leta in pol, ko je pravzaprav v določenih časovnih obdobjih resnično povezljivost držala skupaj niti družbenega življenja. Zato smo lahko pravzaprav zadovoljni z usmeritvami Evropske komisije, ki je marca letos predstavila digitalni kompas 2030, septembra, torej pred dobrim mesecem, pa tudi s tem povezan predlog programa digitalne politike 2030 z imenom Pot v digitalno desetletje. Seveda namen teh dokumentov je pospešitev in oblikovanje uspešne digitalne preobrazbe gospodarstva in družbe v Evropski uniji. Pomembno je, da je Evropska komisija kot enega izmed 4 stebrov uspešne digitalne preobrazbe prepoznala tudi varno, učinkovito in trajnostno infrastrukturo. Pri tem komisija predlaga cilj, da so do leta 2030 oziroma do konca tega desetletja vsa evropska gospodinjstva povezana z gigabitno širokopasovno povezavo. Vsa bolj poseljena območja v Evropi pa tudi s 5G omrežjem oziroma signalom. Zdaj, to so seveda ambiciozni cilji in vsi skupaj so zaokroženi tudi z dopolnitvijo uredbe o dovoljenih državnih pomočeh, to je po mojem mnenju pomembno, v kateri se pravzaprav obstoječ tretma pomoči za širokopasovno infrastrukturo nekako dopolnjuje s pomočjo za mobilna omrežja 4G in 5G. Prav tako so pa posebej izpostavljeni projekti skupnega interesa za digitalno povezljivost, kot so na primer 5G čezmejni koridorji. Zdaj seveda si v Sloveniji v obdobju zadnjih 15 letih prizadevamo izboljšati stanje na področju povezljivosti oziroma dostopa do širokopasovnih omrežij velikih hitrosti. Seveda velik delež tega financiranja so prevzeli zasebni investitorji, torej operaterji elektronskih komunikacij, predvsem na tistih področjih, kjer obstaja tržni interes za gradnjo teh omrežij. Tukaj lahko ugotovimo, da je žal dinamika gradnje nekoliko počasnejša, kot je bilo predvideno. Zdaj, tista gospodinjstva, za katera v času testiranja tržnega interesa pač le-ta ni bil izražen, so postala tako imenovane bele lise in so seveda kot takšne tudi predmet sofinanciranja iz javnih sredstev. In na Ministrstvu za javno upravo je trenutno v teku 5. razpis za gradnjo širokopasovnih omrežij, tako imenovani GOŠO projekt. Kar nekaj dela nas na tem področju še čaka. Zadnji podatki namreč razkrivajo, da je s fiksnim, zelo visoko zmogljivim omrežjem Slovenija trenutno pokrita 66%, prej pa smo seveda omenili cilj do konca desetletja 100% pokritost, tako da je kar precej dela še pred nami. Lahko pač z zadovoljstvom ugotovimo, da je kar nekaj sredstev namenjenih financiranju tega dela v načrtu za okrevanje in odpornost, predlagano pa je tudi sofinanciranje v okviru nove oziroma programiranja nove sheme kohezijske politike. Seveda nas pomembni izzivi čakajo tudi na področju 5G. Zdaj, nedavna oziroma letošnja dodelitev radijskih frekvenc bo prav gotovo vplivala na izboljšanje 5G kazalcev, torej da nas bo nekako DESI indeks pravzaprav sploh zaznal. Treba pa je seveda imeti tudi v mislih ta cilj, ki je bil prej omenjen, torej pokritost, 100% pokritost vseh poseljenih območij do konca desetletja. K temu bo vsaj deloma prav gotovo prispevala tudi strategija upravljanja z radiofrekvenčnim spektrom, za katero predvidevamo, da jo bo v tem tednu potrdila vlada. Torej gre pa za 2-letno obdobje, za katero se ta strategija sprejema. Prav gotovo pa ne gre samo za cilje, ki si jih zastavljamo sami ali pa ki jih nekako usmerja Evropska komisija. Dejstvo je, da enostavno boljšo povezljivost potrebujemo za to, da pač ostanemo konkurenčni. Vemo, da 5G tehnologija v primerjavi z obstoječimi mobilnimi omrežji uporabnikom prinaša veliko večje hitrosti prenosa podatkov v obeh smerih, in to je pravzaprav pomembno za razvoj v mnogih sektorjih. Krajši odzivni časi omogočajo učinkovito povezovanje velikega števila naprav in to omogoča razvoj pametne industrije, pametnih mest in pa omogoča nadaljnjo digitalno preobrazbo gospodarstva. Torej, povezljivost je eden izmed ključnih dejavnikov gospodarskega in družbenega razvoja in zato sem v bistvu zelo vesel organizacije današnjega dogodka in tudi pobude za skupno odkrivanje priložnosti, ki jih prinaša 5G omrežje. Verjamem, da bomo skupaj uspešni. Hvala lepa.
Hvala lepa, gospod Jenko. Po temle pregledu trenutnega stanja in drznih ciljih, ki nas čakajo, pa malček zanimivosti o 5G. Čeprav se o tehnologiji 5G govori že leta, je več kot očitno, da še vedno obstaja precej neutemeljenih dvomov, skepse, nerazumevanja in celo odprtega nasprotovanja tehnologiji, ki v resnici prinaša neslutene možnosti razvoja ne le gospodarstvu, ampak tudi celotni družbi. Da tehnologija 5G ni le višja hitrost interneta, temveč veliko več, celo orodje za bolj učinkovito spopadanje z epidemijami in naravnimi nesrečami, nam bo pojasnil gospod Boštjan Batagel, izredni profesor s Fakultete za elektrotehniko Univerze v Ljubljani. Doktor Batagel je pravi ambasador znanosti, saj je avtor več kot 300 znanstvenih člankov, izumitelj pri 12 patentih, soustanovitelj 2 zagonskih projektov in član številnih mednarodnih združenj in raziskovalnih skupin. Doktor Batagel, oder je vaš.
Najlepša hvala za te uvodne besede. Lepo pozdravljeni vsi skupaj. Jaz imam eno prezentacijo, ki mislim, da upam, da jo vidite, kjer bom poskušal predstaviti nekaj teh novosti, ki jih pravzaprav prinaša tehnologija 5G. Se pravi, kaj je tukaj v tem generaciji drugačnega, kot je bilo v prejšnjih generacijah. Se pravi, če mogoče najprej za začetek postavim to mojo predstavitev, to moje predavanje v malo širši kontekst. Tukaj imam narisane, kako se spremembe v družbi oziroma nasplošno spremembe pravzaprav dogajajo s časom. Kot prvo tukaj na vrhu so znanstvene spremembe, pa to nisem dal zato, ker sem jaz znanstvenik, ampak zato, ker gonilo vseh sprememb v družbi je pravzaprav znanost. Če nasprotujemo tehnološkemu razvoju ali pa političnim spremembam, potem in hočemo iti v samo jedro, potem je najbrž treba narediti proteste in ustaviti poskuse v CERN-u. Ker tam je tista znanost, ki se dogaja in bo dolgoročno imela posledice naprej. Za temi znanstvenimi spremembami pridejo tako imenovane tehnološke spremembe, kjer je neka, recimo, informatizacija, digitalizacija, sprememba proizvodnih procesov, transporta in tako dalje. Se pravi, to je mogoče nekaj tisto, kar delajo potem inženirji, kar po svoje delamo inženirji. Sledijo potem te družbene spremembe, se pravi, da družba pravzaprav prevzame nekaj, kar so inženirji naredili, se pravi neke spremembe življenjskega sloga, preseljevanje v končni fazi, demografske spremembe, skrb za okolje, enakost, etična pravila in tako dalje. In šele potem so te stvari, o katerih boste danes večinoma govorili, se pravi te ekonomsko-poslovne spremembe, ki jih bomo spoznali v današnjem dnevu. Seveda, čisto na dnu, mogoče kdo misli drugače, mogoče mu mediji prikazujejo drugače, ampak čisto na dnu so potem pa neke politične spremembe. od tistega, da znanstveniki nekaj odkrijejo, do tistega, da pride nek zakon, ki to obravnava, da pridejo neki davki na to, poteče desetletja, mogoče celo stoletja, ne? Do tistega, da se zgodi neka revolucija, da se zbudijo sindikati, ne nazadnje, da nastanejo tudi vojne. Se pravi, sam to, da sem malček postavil v nek širši kontekst, to, o čemer mislim zdajle govoriti, in jaz bom predvsem predstavil v 5G te znanstvene in inženirske, tehnološke spremembe, tako da ne bo kdo razmišljal o tem, da jaz poskušam tukaj vam bolj neke poslovno-ekonomske spremembe prikazati. No, ljudje, ki so sposobni tega globega pogleda, od tehnoloških, pravzaprav znanstveno-tehnoloških sprememb do političnih in družbenih sprememb, so zelo redki. Jaz jih pač občudujem, nikoli ne vem, ali to je zato, ker pač dosti govorijo in pač jim nekaj rata, ne? Recimo tukaj jaz želim izpostaviti samo dva. Arthur Clarke je že pred več kot 50 leti napovedal, da bomo ljudje na tem svetu med seboj povezani, da prihajajo spremembe, da bo mogoče iz enega konca sveta na drugi konec sveta narediti poslovno priložnost, posel, v končni fazi tudi operacijo nadaljavo, je že on predvidel. In to se nam danes dogaja. Se pravi, bil je človek, ki je videl tako daleč v prihodnost. Še enega želim izpostaviti, Steve Jobs. Zakaj njega? Zato, ker je pravzaprav rekel, da če hočemo, mi marsikaj prenašamo po naših omrežjih danes, ampak če hočemo pa čustva prenašati, potem pa rabimo res veliko pasovno širino. To, da me nadaljavo nekateri poslušajo, to ni noben tak dosežek, ampak to, da oni začutijo, kaj jaz pravzaprav, ali imam tremo, ali nimam tremo, ali to z nekim navdušenjem pripovedujem. Zato rabimo več pasovne širine, rabimo v neke nianse v glasu spoznati. To ljudje zmoremo, ampak če bo nekako omrežje dovolj širokopasovno, bomo lahko tudi to prenašali. Se pravi, ne bo nam več treba zraven vsega sporočila dati emojije. Okay? In jaz pravim, da omrežje bo dovolj sposobno takrat, ko bojo izumrli emojiji. Zaenkrat jih še precej videvam, tako da smo še precej daleč od tistega omrežja, ki si ga želimo. Če grem na tale 5G, kaj pravzaprav je nek 5G? Združenje operaterjev je naredilo neko definicijo in potem tudi 3GPP, ki je standardizacijska organizacija, pravzaprav je naredila neko definicijo, ampak ja, tukaj so neki novi poslovni modeli, lahko rečemo, da prejšnje generacije so vse uporabnike obravnavale enako. Zdajšnja generacija pa naj bi določeno segmentu uporabnikov namenili neke storitve samo za njih, kvaliteto storitev samo za njih. Kako bi rekli temu politično? Jaz sem malo študiral, mogoče prehod iz komunizma, kjer so vsi enaki, v kapitalizem, kjer pač toliko kot plačaš, toliko dobiš. Tako kvaliteto storitev dobiš. Ja, zdaj pa, če gremo pogledati malo, kako je ta evolucija od 1G do 5G, ko je prišla prva generacija, noben ni klical prva generacija, tako kot prvo svetovno vojno, niso klicali prva svetovna vojna, šele ko je prišla druga, so jo začeli klicati prva svetovna vojna. Zato noben ni takrat mobilne telefonije imenoval, to je prva generacija. Nekako na 10 let grejo stvari naprej. Približno. In kaj so tiste glavne značilnosti, ki jih mogoče uporabniki čutijo? Jaz sem tukaj napisal eno zmogljivost omrežja. Se pravi, koliko bitkov pravzaprav na sekundo mi zmoremo prenesti. In ja, seveda, analogni nismo prenašali še bitkov, ampak sem naredil en tak preračun, da bi to bilo nekaj kilobitkov na sekundo. Ja, in to se povečuje zdaj skozi te generacije. Če smo v drugi generaciji potrebovali za celovečerni film, da se je pač da smo ga pretočili na svojo mobilno napravo cel dan. Če v 4G potrebujemo za to 10 minut, v 5G bomo za to potrebovali 10 sekund. In to je to. Nič več od tega. Lažna novica je to, da boste lahko gledali filme iz 80-ih let v realnem času. Tako, se pravi, to je samo hitrost, ki jo povečujemo. Kaj poleg tega nam prinaša to omrežje? Zakasnitve v tem omrežju se znižujejo. Se pravi, vemo, koliko časa je bilo treba v prvi generaciji, da se je vzpostavil klic in koliko bolj odziven je internet recimo v zdajšnjih generacijah. In to je tisto, kar mogoče bo in je nekako prineslo neke družbene spremembe. Če smo v začetnih generacijah samo prenašali zvok in smo se samo slišali nadaljavo, se zdaj tudi vidimo nadaljavo, upam, da me vidite nadaljavo, tisti, ki me spremljate nadaljavo, in če bomo zakasnitve še nadaljno zmanjševali, bomo lahko tudi se občutili nadaljavo. Se pravi, bomo lahko nekaj več tukaj naredili. In to je tisto, kar bo mogoče prineslo neke spremembe. Zdaj, kaj je to? A bo to nek robot, ki ga bomo nadaljavo vodili? To je pač nekaj, kar bo družba oziroma podjetniki mogli zagrabiti sami in videti, kaj je v tem. Mislim, da že vsi veste in ste že dostikrat videli to pajčevino, kaj pravzaprav so razlike med 4G in 5G. Ogromno je, če grem kar pokazati, kaj je to, ta razlika 4G, 5G, se pravi, ogromno je nekih parametrov, ki tukaj so prikazani, se pravi, od boljše zmogljivosti omrežja do nizkih zakasnitev, velikega števila naprav in tako dalje. Boljša spektralna učinkovitost. Jaz razmišljam pravzaprav že o tem, kaj bo prinesel 6G. In 6G sem zapisal tukaj nekaj teh številk, se pravi, še večje zmogljivosti, še večje število naprav, ki jih bomo lahko povezali v omrežje, še večje hitrosti uporabnikov, ampak mogoče na tej mreži niti ni prikazano nekaj bolj pomembnega za družbene spremembe. Lahko bomo določili položaj iz 1 metra na 1 centimeter, kje je naprava, kje je ta robot ali pa kdorkoli. Se pravi, ampak ta 1 centimeter bo najverjetneje šele v 6G. Varnost omrežja se bo izboljšala, zanesljivost, razpoložljivost omrežja iz teh 5 devetk na 6 devetk. Razpoložljivost omrežja, zanesljivost je pravzaprav zelo pomembna za podjetja, še posebno za neko kritično infrastrukturo. To, da imamo v omrežju 5G 5 devetk, to pomeni, da je izpad 26 sekund v maksimalen izpad dovoljen, 26 sekund v enem mesecu. In to bo v 6G samo slabe 3 sekunde. To je tisto, kar bojo uporabniki mogoče najbolj občutili, neko podjetje. Zdaj, pri 5G-ju oziroma mobilni telefoniji se dogaja nekaj, da iz tistega booma, ki smo ga imeli pred 10 leti, da je število prodanih telefonov blazno naraščalo, in očitno v ekonomiji ni pomembno, da prodajaš, ampak pomembno je, da je trend naraščanja vedno večji. Smo prišli v to, da zdaj se proda 1,5 milijarde telefonov na leto, ampak ker ne narašča ta prodaja, ekonomiste to več ne zanima. Je bilo treba izmisliti se nekaj drugega. Se pravi, kaj pa narašča trenutno v omrežju? Promet narašča. Se pravi, vedno več teh podatkov prenesemo. Tudi moje 3 najstniki, doma 80 gigabajtov na mesec jim ni dovolj. Oni te zadnje 3 dni že na škrge dihajo. Jaz se pač temu čudim, ampak se razumem, to so zdaj nove generacije. In pravijo, da bo čez 10 let nekako 600 gigabajtov na mesec na uporabnika premalo. Se pravi 10, 20 krat, 3krat, 30 krat več kot zdaj te moje porabe. Ja, čez 10 let mogoče res. Se pravi, bo bolj kvaliteten video, čeprav ne vem, zakaj bi to rabil na majhni napravi, bojo neke nove stvari. Ja, promet gre gor. In to je mogoče tisti razlog, zakaj pravzaprav je smiselno preiti iz 4G na 5G. Ker če gledamo samo prodajo naprav, to bi rekli, ne vem, moramo se izmisliti nekaj novega. In to nekaj novega so pač nove vertikale. Se pravi, bomo še nekaj drugega počeli, ne samo ljudem prodajali telefone. No in ta prvi odgovor, zakaj potrebujemo 5G, je pravzaprav v tem prometu, kot sem že rekel. Se pravi, če pogledamo z leti promet narašča in če bi hoteli zadovoljiti te potrebe, ki so po prometu z 4G tehnologijo, bi morali graditi vedno več baznih postaj. Če uvedemo 5G, če dobimo nove frekvenčne pasove, lahko shajamo z istim številom baznih postaj še nekaj let. In to je ključno za operaterje. Se pravi, ne iščejo novih lokacij, ne postavljajo novih baznih postaj. Ko so se začele postavljati prve bazne postaje v Sloveniji, takrat ste lahko zasledili, da je ogromno ljudi bolela glava. Tudi jaz sem to zasledil eno nedeljo popoldne po kosilu, po kozarcu vina in v bistvu naredil svojo najbolj uspešno objavo na Facebooku, ko sem pokazal ljudem, da domet tisti nevarnega, potencialno nevarnega polja od ene bazne postaje je samo dobre 2 metra. To se da z izračuni pokazati, s tem, da pač sem vzel maksimalno oddajno moč, kar nikoli ni, ker operaterji hočejo vedno šparati v omrežju in z najmanj energije prenesti največ informacije. Za tiste, ki vas zanima, kako se naredi izračun še za druge frekvence, je pravzaprav, sem že pred leti objavil en članek, priporočam, da si ga preberete. Je pa v tem tukaj ena skepsa, da ta mejna vrednost, koliko je dovoljeno električno polje v okolici, je od države do države enako. ICNIRP sicer podaja mednarodne smernice, ampak neki držav v tej Evropi, bom rekel, dela pa po svoje. Recimo Grčija, Belgija, Slovenija, Italija in Švica. In tukaj je tisto, kar je problem. Potem meni ljudje rečejo, zakaj je pri njih so ostrejše meje. In če bi kaj morali politično narediti, je to, da bi se zavzeli, da bi pač vse te države, vključno z našo, končno sprejele te mednarodne smernice, ki so jih strokovnjaki postavili medicinske in drugih strok za to, koliko je dovoljeno v omrežju. Ampak da ne bom zdaj preveč šel v eno smer, da se povrnem malček na tale 5G. Zdaj, 5G se lahko začne uvajati na več različnih načinov. Tukaj vidimo 2 kratici, eno je standalone in drugo je non-standalone, se pravi samostojni način delovanja in nesamostojni način delovanja. Se pravi, ena od možnosti samostojnega načina delovanja je, da pravzaprav ne bomo imeli 5G-ja in da bomo imeli to možnost, da bomo pravzaprav ostali na LTE-ju z omrežjem, hrbteničnim omrežjem LTE. To pravzaprav ni 5G. Ampak potem obstajajo še druge možnosti, se pravi, da naredimo tudi novo jedrno omrežje, nove bazne postaje ali pa vse te kombinacije, ki so potem v spodnjih vrsticah tudi predstavljene in tudi podkombinacije, ki tukaj niso predstavljene. Ampak kaj zdaj mi počnemo v Sloveniji? Mi temu omrežju, ki je LTE, dodajamo še bazne postaje, ki so 5G. Moje vprašanje tukaj je, kdaj se bo uporabniku pojavlja ikonca 5G na njegovem telefonu? Pri kateri od teh kombinacij in podkombinacij? Jaz vem, da operaterji, nekateri bi radi imeli 4G omrežje in naredili, da se mu pokaže 5G ikonca. Ampak o teh stvareh je treba se začeti pogovarjati, katero kombinacijo tukaj graditi. Ker To, kar zdaj pač počnemo, je, da temu 4G omrežju priključimo 5G omrežje na nekih mogoče celo novih frekvenčnih pasovih in nekako v prihodnosti je mišljeno prehajanje potem teh 5G baznih postaj celo na frekvence 4G in nekako sobivanje teh dveh tehnologij. Ampak to sobivanje je za moje pojme neka zgrešena pot v razvoju. Ja? Razumem, da je pač investicije treba nekako upravičiti, ampak vam bom pokazal, zakaj je zgrešena. Tudi večino operaterjev je šlo na ta način, da zdaj gradijo non-standalone omrežja. Neki, mogoče na Kitajskem, v Nemčiji, ZDA, Kanadi, Singapurju, Južni Koreji, Avstraliji, že so šli v to, da gradijo standalone, samostojna 5G omrežja, ampak ostali pa capljamo in to capljanje nas bo tudi nekaj stalo. Ja? Dostikrat slišimo o tem rezinjanju o 5G omrežju, se pravi, da bomo vsakemu uporabniku lahko dali tisto, kar bi je plačal nekako. Ne? Ampak rezinjanje pravzaprav ni nič novega. Rezinjanje je bilo mogoče narediti tudi že v 4G omrežju. Se pravi, za različne uporabnike, tukaj sem narisal 3 različne uporabnike, enemu pač omogočimo povezavo LTE preko jedrnega omrežja, ki je za njega, drugemu omogočimo mobile broadband preko 5G povezave ali pa neko Iot povezavo za moj sesalnik doma, ki mi pač zdajle čisti dnevno sobo. In hočem sam vedeti, kdaj bo končal. To, kar bo v 5G omrežju mogoče, je tukaj en prav poseben parameter mišljen, 32 bitov, kjer bomo pa lahko povezave, to rezinjenje, naredili čez celotno omrežje in eni napravi, tukaj sem narisal avtomobil, omogočili več različnih povezljivosti. Se pravi, če bojo avtomobili avtonomni, bomo hoteli imeti neko širokopasovno povezavo do tega avtomobila, da bomo pač med vožnjo spremljali nek film ali pa nekaj drugega. Avtomobil bo komuniciral z drugimi avtomobili in z infrastrukturo okrog sebe, se pravi, to bo neka svoja rezina. In najverjetneje bo tudi kot Iot priklopljen za to, da bojo na servisu imeli stanje v baterijah in drugih parametrih motorja, da nas bojo avtomobila, da nas bojo znali opozoriti na tole. Ja, in zdaj, če mi uvajamo 5G kot nesamostojni način, potem tega ne bomo imeli, to vrstnega rezinjanja. Zato pravim, da je to neka cokla razvoja. Ja? Zdaj mi lahko govorimo in Akos je razpisal frekvence in jih podelil in rekel, da je treba opremiti avtoceste s 5G. Ampak a je povedal, s katerim 5G? Jaz tega nisem zasledil, mogoče se motim. A je povedal, a je samostojnim ali nesamostojnim, ali tistim, ki bo omogočil to vrstno rezinjanje, da bo vsak avtomobil se povezal na več rezinah, ali bomo še zmeraj imeli tako, kot v 4G omrežju. To so tiste ključne vprašanja, ki se meni zdijo tukaj, da jih je pač potrebno odpreti in se začeti tudi od njih pogovarjati. Seveda, ko govorimo o frekvencah, se je treba zavedati, da niso vse frekvence enake. Ene frekvence so boljše za neko pokritost, druge frekvence so boljše za široko pasovnost. Ja? Nimamo pa enih super frekvenc, ki bi vse omogočile. Se pravi, če hočemo na dolge razdalje, se pravi velike celice imeti in majhne zakasnitve, imamo samo eno rešitev. Ja? Se pravi, čim nižje frekvence in tako, kot bom pokazal, ko imamo različne slote mogoče, te slote narediti take, da bomo imeli čim manjše zakasnitve. Ampak to spet ni mogoče, če nimamo samostojnega načina 5G. Ne bom se spuščal toliko v samo tehniko. Seveda, frekvence so pomembne, ker frekvence pravzaprav podeljujejo države, za vse drugo lahko poskrbimo inženirji, ampak moramo se tudi dogovoriti, kaj bomo točno začeli uveljavljati. No, to so ta prilagodljiv način, ki ga pravzaprav 5G zdaj omogoča in ga prejšnje generacije niso. Se pravi, tukaj mi lahko z nekim slotom, z neko režo, dolžine te reže, te povezave, ki jo naredimo iz omrežja do uporabnika in nazaj, lahko določimo, koliko bo zakasnitev skozi to omrežje. In dokler se šlepamo na ta 4G, mi ne moramo zboljšati zakasnitev. V radijskem delu govorim. To, kar 5G prenaša, je še to, da od naprave do bazne postaje imamo zdaj isti način komunikacije, OFDM. Zakaj to? Zato, da bojo naprave tudi med sabo lahko komunicirale brez bazne postaje. Ja, ampak spet govorim, če imamo še vedno 4G v omrežju in nesamostojen način, tega tudi ne moramo doseči. Ta prilagodljivost je pa tudi še zmeraj malček problematična. Zakaj? Zato, ker tale pasovna širina, ja, na papirju je vse prilagodljivo, ampak ko gremo v prakso, na višjih frekvencah pravzaprav lahko naredimo samo večje razmike med podnosilniki, ker manjših razmikov ne moramo narediti, ker nimamo tako dobrih oscilatorjev. To smo v naši raziskovalni skupini videli kot bistven problem že pred leti in že nekaj let delamo na tem, da izboljšamo oscilatorje tudi na višjih frekvencah in cel kup objav, projektov in patentov imamo z tega področja. Ja, in tisto, kar delamo raziskovalno, je, da razmišljamo tudi o novih frekvenčnih področjih. Se pravi, iz radijskih valov smo prešli v mikrovalove, milimetrske valove, mogoče bomo šli v terahertzne valove. In prav zdaj imamo en čist nov evropski projekt, ki razmišljamo o tem, da bi šli na svetlobo. Lepo vabljeni, da se pridružite temu projektu in razmišljate skupaj z nami, a je to nekaj, kar bi bilo smiselno ali ne. Ker že pri milimetrskih valovih vidimo, da ti pravzaprav usmeriš en žarek proti uporabniku. In ko ta uporabnik gre za stavbo, pravzaprav ga ne dosežeš več. Ampak isto naredimo z svetlobnim signalom. Se pravi, lahko je to smiselno nekako napredovati. Dovolite mi, da še zaključim. Upam, da nisem bil predolg. Malo sem razmišljal, kaj naj za zaključek pokažem, da bi mogoče še bolj plastično razumeli to, kar sem hotel povedati skozi to mojo predstavitev. Ja, na YouTubeu boste srečali razne ljudi, ki predelajo avtomobil. Ampak tukaj sem zdaj res zelo provokativen in lahko vzamemo en star avtomobil in mu dodamo nov motor, tako kot smo zdaj dodali bazno postajo. Ampak a je res ta avtomobil tudi bolj zanesljiv, a je tudi bolj varen, a je tudi bolj varčen? Mene ne bo noben ekolog prepričal, da je avtomobil z 2 motorjema bolj ekološki, kot avtomobil z enim motorjem. To, kar danes počnemo, imamo 2 motorja, 2 bazni postaji. Ja, mislim, saj lahko se pogovarjamo o teh stvareh, ampak upam, da sem, mogoče ni lih najboljši primer ta slika, ampak upam, da sem vam to pokazal nekako. Tudi, če govorimo o varnosti, dokler imamo še stare tehnologije v omrežju, se pravi tudi 2G, se pravi, tam je šifriranje, ki je bilo razvito 30 let nazaj. Vsak boljši študent IKT zna to šifriranje razbiti. Se pravi, kako je najlažji način za prisluškovanje 5G-jev, tako da narediš motilnik na 5G-jev, telefon enostavno priklopi na 2G in prisluškuješ. Se pravi, kje je zdaj ta silna varnost, ki smo jo poskušali uvesti skozi standarde? Tukaj počnemo neke neumnosti. Se pravi, ne smemo gledati samo skozi oči hitrosti, tak avtomobil bo res šel hitreje, ampak kot sem rekel, ali bo tudi bolj zanesljiv, bolj varen in bolj varčen. Ja, kje se najbolj uporablja večji pretok podatkov pri navidezni resničnosti in upam, da to ni edini business case, ki je smiselen. Kravam so na eni ruski farmi dali očala, kjer so pač gledali, da so na zelenem pašniku in zaradi tega proizvajajo več mleka. Vse to je že stara finta, pred 10 letmi so jim vrteli klasično glasbo. Ampak zdaj jim bojo pa dali HD video pašniko na veliki planini. Hvala za pozornost. Hočem povedati, da 5G ni edina rešitev za izvedbo brezžičnih radijskih omrežij. Obstajajo tudi druge, o drugih boste lahko poslušali tudi na seminarju radijske komunikacije. Nažalost je pa 5G tista tehnologija, ki je najbolj medijsko privlačna. Ne vem zakaj. Na eni strani teoretiki zarot, ki vidijo v njej hudiča, na drugi strani bom rekel, evropski birokrati, ki vidijo v njej čarobno paličico, ki bo rešila vse zagate tega IKT sveta, ampak ja, resnica je pa najbrž nekje vmes. Toliko za danes. Hvala.
Doktor Batagel, hvala lepa za tole provokativno predavanje, ki odpira marsikatere zanimive ideje, misli in seveda verjamem tudi pionirska področja, na katerih lahko naredimo korak naprej. In če gre verjeti slovenskim inženirjem, je vse to, kar smo pravkar slišali, kaj kmalu lahko tudi dejansko mogoče. Pa se preselimo iz Slovenije še čez mejo. Kako so tehnologijo 5G sprejeli v drugih evropskih državah? Kakšno je trenutno stanje? S kakšnimi izzivi se srečujejo? Podatke in izkušnje nam bo predstavil direktor za infrastrukturo, zasebnost in varnost pri organizaciji Digital Europe, Alberto Di Felice. Mr. Di Felice, welcome to our digital stage, and our question, of course, is, has Europe managed to deliver on its promise to be the leader in the development and deployment of 5G technology?
Good morning. Thank you for the introduction and thank you for the invitation for this wonderful event. I was very happy to listen to the first presentation, even though clearly my Slovenian is not that developed. I will be talking about the status of 5G in Europe. It will be a high-level description of the state of play. And preliminarily, before I start doing that, maybe I'll say a few words about the association that I represent, Digital Europe. We are the main pan-European trade association for digital. Collectively, we speak on behalf of 36,000 companies operating across Europe. We do so by being a dual chamber that represents both direct corporate members, and there's 91 of them, increasingly from sectors that are not the usual suspects when it comes to digital. They're not purely representing the, if you will, traditional ICT sector, but increasingly more traditional sectors, what the ICT sector would call verticals. So increasingly we've been growing in the past few years, particularly a number of companies from the manufacturing, health, connected vehicles, and finance sectors have been joining the association. We've been developing vertical work streams as well as growing our older groups dealing with digital files to represent a growing spectrum of digitizing companies. And the second chamber that we represent is made up of national trade associations. So it's a very broad network of national associations such as GCS, which is our Slovenian member, all of whom represent thousands of companies, most of which are local, smaller businesses that are active in digital, and also again, smaller companies from other sectors who are in the process of digitizing. So it goes without saying that connectivity sits at the core of our mission, because there is no digital without the underlying infrastructure and connectivity technology. So the work on connectivity cuts across all the work streams that we have, and is of great interest to virtually all our members. This, if you will, reflects the changing nature of connectivity and the way that it's seen by policymakers at European level. And probably it reflects the changing nature of digital more broadly. And we've seen digital grow as part of the Commission's work program of the last few years, certainly with the new Commission. When it comes to 5G specifically, clearly the work starts with the previous Commission. It starts at a time when the global narrative and conditions around 5G were still being defined. Back in 2016, as you will know, there was the first definition of the 5G Action Plan, where the European Union and its member states defined the next transformative steps that Europe, the member states, and industry would have to take to make 5G a reality in the following years. The Gigabit Society objectives looked at the scenarios for 2025, so just 4 years from now, and the scenario that the goals that Europe set itself were to do with the availability of fixed connectivity, reaching households, the usual struggle that we've been discussing in Europe for quite some time, of fiber deployment, and also looking at what Europe calls the main socioeconomic drivers, so making sure that connectivity reaches the right communities. And more specifically, so there's a focus also on the demand side somewhat. But specifically for 5G for 2025, there's the objective of having 5G coverage in all populated areas, major urban areas, and all major terrestrial transport paths. And we saw quite a lot of stress on cars and transportation in the previous presentation. I'll come back to that in the following slides. Also, we've seen, in addition to these, if you will, soft core targets, we've seen a major reform of the European Electronic Communications Code, so the regulatory framework for telecommunications, which just effectively kicked in last December, where the code entered into application. That was a major reform. One of the areas that they were looking at between the Parliament and the Council of the European Union during negotiations on this proposal was specifically spectrum reform. And the goal of that discussion was to make sure that the member states could advance in a more coherent and faster way when it comes to assigning spectrum for mobile communications, which has been a recurring theme in European discussions, importantly since the advent of LTE and auctions for that spectrum. Europe certainly didn't want to repeat the slow progress that it made on 4G auctions. And while that discussion at a broader level about spectrum reform was not necessarily that game-changing, the code did set a binding commitment for all member states to allocate and assign all the bands of 5G spectrum by 2020. And this is important because, as I said, the code was only supposed to enter into application as of December last year. We know that there have been massive delays by a vast majority of member states in doing that, but that requirement for all member states would kick in effectively alongside the application of the code. So it would speed up the process for 5G assignments quite considerably. And also with the new commission, we've seen digital really at the center of defining the new commission, the new efforts that Europe needs to adopt in a global context, increasingly difficult, if you will, global context. And clearly there is if you will, a repetition and a growth in the digital targets that were announced as part of the Gigabit Society objectives, both when it comes to fiber deployment, but advancing toward a gigabit society and making sure that 5G covers all populated areas in the EU. And this is done through a combination of different tools, which importantly include investments through the recovery funds, among others, and I'll come back to this point, and also looking at connectivity in the broader context of the digital strategy, looking at gaps for Europe where we need to invest in additional capabilities, and also looking at the aspects of digital single market that require more action in terms of interconnection and interoperability more broadly. So this is if you will, the broad picture, the promises. In October now of 2021, where do we stand? What's going on in terms of 5G deployment? Well, 2021 is probably the turning point where we are starting to see more coherently commercial services becoming available. There's 24 countries now where some sort of 5G commercial service is available. If you look at the details, though, the picture becomes very interesting because there's different mix of how member states have gone about doing this. You'll see there are some member states where all the pioneer bands have been assigned already. And we see different percentages of operators in those member states using those bands to deliver services. There's also quite a good percentage of member states where there's been partial assignment. So not all the 5G spectrum bands have been assigned, and the current services use a combination of, if you will, the sub 6 gigahertz bands and existing spectrum used for other services, and most notably LTE, to deliver 5G as well using what is called dynamic spectrum sharing. And we also see one country there, and unfortunately it's my own country of Belgium, which is probably the black sheep here, where only one operator delivers 5G services, and they do so by effectively reusing existing spectrum. So none of the pioneer spectrum bands have effectively been assigned so far in that country. So the commercial situation is a good snapshot, and is a nice segue to the spectrum situation around 5G, because the underlying, if you will, technical regulatory situation under the commercial launch is that less than half of all spectrum that was supposed to be assigned for 5G has been assigned, just under 40%. And you see the situation there where we have roughly around 50% of the sub 6 gigahertz bands that have been assigned. But the situation really is much more difficult for the 26 gigahertz band, which is again one band that is particularly important for 5G because it delivers on the, if you will, the incremental changes in the 5G scenario that can be achieved in higher bands. And here the situation really is that only a handful of member states have been able to assign all these spectrum bands. And around 85% of them have not done so yet. To give you an order of magnitude of what we're looking at, this is a study that was conducted in the first half of this year by a consultancy, Analysis Mason, and it looks specifically at the costs and opportunities that lie behind deployment of 5G in the 26 gigahertz band. And this really shows one of the narratives around 5G that have been there since the beginning of 5G. That is that 5G caters for a growing number of vertical use cases, and we see the calculations there. In particular, you'll notice that smart factories, so smart manufacturing, in agriculture are the biggest values in terms of the benefits from deployment in these scenarios, where particularly for, if you will, for localized deployments and in extreme scenarios where we'll need the full spectrum of benefits delivered by 5G, the deployment scenarios could be particularly beneficial. And these are all opportunities right now that we are missing on because the commercial launches have largely been focusing on the consumer market, and have only been able to count on a limited number of spectrum assignments so far in the member states. So this is the situation, and there is again a spectrum of measures that Europe has been adopting to make sure that connectivity advances more coherently and faster going forward. Notably, as I said already, the new commission, it's the first time that we see this. We've seen a number of clearly digital initiatives from past commissions, but it is the first time that a commission decides to define itself in terms of its digital ambitions. And the ambition for Europe is that the decade up to 2030 and slightly beyond that should be Europe's digital decade. This has been front and center of the new von der Leyen Commission, and clearly it's very encouraging for us in the, if you will, in the digital sector, because this has been clearly our narrative for years and years, and we see that now becoming a reality. It's simply a fact, if you will, for policymakers and concerted European action, and the need to coordinate that with the member states as well. What does that mean concretely? Well, first of all, there are hard commitments that have been made at European level, and most notably, you'll know that clearly there's the recovery facility, the recovery funds, which have been an important statement from Europe as to the contribution that Europe can make to helping all European member states to get out of the dire economic situation that was created by the pandemic, and putting our money where our mouth is, and investing more in the transformative areas that can deliver economic competitiveness for the future of Europe. And an important part of that is that 20% of the recovery package has been allotted as an objective at European level to digital. So the European Commission has given all member states the target to spend 20% of the funds that come from Europe on digital targets. It's the first time that we see this sort of percentage point for digital. And it's fair to say that digital was the smaller part of all the public money that was spent at European level. And this is now beginning to change. Digital, again, this is a sign that digital is seen as a key component of a strong economy. And as Digital Europe clearly have been advocating for more spending on digital for a number of years. And quite clearly we have, if you will, jumped on the opportunity of the 20% target, which we have been pushing for before it became public. And we, roughly 1 year ago, we produced this flagship paper, which shows the way forward for member states as to how they can spend and on what priorities they should be spending the digital 20% of the recovery funds that are allotted to them. And as you'll see, connectivity and infrastructure features as part of those recommendations, both in terms of, again, bridging the infamous urban-rural digital divide, but also importantly in using 5G for augmenting connectivity of traditional sectors. And we saw the slide that I showed earlier on the 26 gigahertz opportunity and the role that that plays, particularly for digitizing sectors. So if you look at all the funds that are available right now, there is roughly 670 billion euros that stem from Next Generation EU. So the relevant part of the Recovery and Resilience Facility, 130 billion, 20% of that is devoted to digital. And clearly we see the plans for member states as to how they will spend this money. It's been an important discussion between the Commission and member states. And clearly there is a need to make sure, as we said, that those funds are spent coherently and along the same types of priorities so that we achieve scale for the investments within Europe, and we don't end up with pockets of money that are spent without a clear way forward in each individual member state. Clearly, there's other funds that can also be combined and used in combination with the RRF. There's structural funds where we still have 6 billion. It's an important sum, 6 billion euros for digital networks. We have the Connecting Europe facility, which is entering a new phase up to 2027, where with the broadband fund, we have just under 2 billion euros for broadband deployment, particularly important for the urban rural divide. And there's also the EFSI, the European Fund for Strategic Investments, where over 2 billion euros is still allotted to next generation access projects. And this is in addition, if you will, to national funds, purely national initiatives that are also being devoted to digital and 5G in particular. And it's interesting to see, the change in the share of funds, particularly in the Connecting Europe facility, which has been historically the main funding mechanism for broadband networks. There's still quite a big chunk of that mechanism, which is used for pan-European 5G infrastructure and deployment of 5G in smart communities. As I said, there's more of a focus on the demand side and serving specific constituencies on the industrial side as well with these funds. And as you all know, the Connecting Europe facility is also being used to augment the EU's digital ambitions in a number of other areas, including cloud, HPC, and quantum, which are a key part of the strategy from the new Commission. We spoke about the importance of corridors already in the 5G action plan. There has been this determination that 5G will serve as a critical tool for connectivity across the main transport pathways in addition to urban areas. This has been an early focus of trials, and corridors have been effectively one of the key vectors for trials around 5G so far. Back in 2017, there was a letter of intent that launched member states' intention to spend money piloting 5G across a number of corridors. There's 12 corridors that are up and running across Europe, and there's the promise of having those corridors reach the number of 50 in the coming years, largely through the Connecting Europe Facility 2 funding that, again, will cover the budget for 2021 and 2027. So this is a very important area to be involved in. And we also saw in the previous presentation the importance that transportation has in these discussions. So the ambition is starting to be there. It sits along the ambition for digital to be a growing part of the European economy and driving Europe's competitiveness globally. And regaining, if you will, some of the lost competitiveness using digital. The ambition is there. There's probably scope to be even more ambitious, probably on the connectivity targets, considering that we are at an inflection point within the digital decade. 2028 will be, if you will, the 10-year anniversary of the first pre-trial launches of 5G, and we all know that usually there's a generational gap of 10 years between generations of mobile technology. So by the end of the digital decades, we should also be thinking in terms of 6G targets. So the ambition is there. It's a good sign. We could also be more ambitious probably. And most definitely the time to invest is now. There are considerable sums of money that the member states need to spend in conjunction with private funds that can also be contributed to augment the total amount of money spent on digital priorities. It is something that member states need to do now, need to do so coherently, and we as industry are committed to this process, and we look forward to seeing the results of these investments for the rest of the digital decade. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you all so much for listening, and I also look forward to the panel discussion later today.
Thank you, Mr. Di Felice. I hope we managed to seize all the opportunities that we heard about and truly make this decade a digital decade. Dame in gospodje, verjamem, da je pravi čas za kratek odmor. Vzemimo si 5 minut in vabim vas, da se nam nazaj pridružite ob 10:40. Ladies and gentlemen, please be back at 10:40. Thank you.
With innovative 5G-powered technology, preventive maintenance on the track and the ability to react faster to obstructions is possible. Our solution consists of a system of rotating drones wirelessly connected to the driving train that acts as a charging, connectivity, and data processing platform. The drones scan the tracks and infrastructure ahead of the train at a distance equal to the safe braking distance of the train. Inside the cabin, the train driver has a visual video stream of the track ahead, overlaid with warning information produced by artificial intelligence. This way, the driver can better evaluate the oncoming situation and take proactive measures such as reducing speed or braking. On top of this, for very high-risk situations, the AI system can automatically initiate an emergency brake. The ambition is to bring to market a full end-to-end solution, including custom installation, hardware and software licenses, and an SLA agreement. We are flexible when it comes to commercial models, CAPEX, OPEX, or a percentage of cost saving calculated by a reduction in the number and severity of incidents. If your train stops on time, it's because our drone is ahead of its time.
Prišla je revolucija. Več 3.0, več prenosa podatkov, neomejeni klici, sporočila in 5G hitrosti v vseh mobilnih paketih več. Vse to za vse uporabnike. Čas je za boljši mobilni paket. Čas je za lahko odločitev. Čas je za več. Telemach.
Drage dame in gospodje, ladies and gentlemen, kindly invited back. Verjamem, da ste si privoščili kratek oddih in morda vsaj tisti, ki ste z nami tukaj v digitalnem središču, tudi poklepetali s kolegi, sodelavci in poslovnimi partnerji. In to je zagotovo ena izmed dejavnosti, ki jih je najbolj prijetno početi v živo. A tudi na tem področju, kot še na mnogih drugih, beležimo zanimive napredke in tehnološke rešitve. Prav zato predlagam, da v nadaljevanju prisluhnemo pregledu nekaterih dobrih rešitev in primerov odličnih praks iz logistike, industrije in telekomunikacije. V številnih državah po svetu komercialna omrežja 5G ponujajo izboljšano mobilnost, prilagodljivost, odzivnost in varnost. Vas zanima, kako tehnologija 5G lahko poganja poslovanje in kakšne možnosti ponuja? Aleksandar Todorovski, country manager pri Ericsson Slovenija, nam bo predstavil primere Ericssonovih rešitev, ki temeljijo na tehnologiji 5G. Mr. Todorovski, welcome.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Zid, for giving an opportunity to talk about 5G for industries, 5G for business. So let's jump on the agenda. So I constructed it in three main pillars. So what is 5G enabling for the business, how 5G for business can be implemented, and evolving worldwide use cases. So we will, let's say, concentrate on three main topics in the presentation. But before we speak about what is 5G bringing for the business, let's talk a bit more about most hyped word nowadays. That's a digitalization. Most important questions that companies are asking themselves now are, where are they in the digitalization journey? Some of our studies for 1,100 IT managers in several countries shown that some of the companies find the digitalization very crucial, some 70% of them. 60% have a clear plan what they will do with digitalization, and approximately 50% already are well underway in their digitalization. So they are doing this they are not waiting for 5G for this to happen. So they are not waiting for fancy features, for new technology to come. The path is there and it's ongoing. So digitalization as a trend is there. 5G can only, let's say, speed it up. So if we see, we have some 33% of service providers are 33% of them, let's say, are considered as a partners to the companies. Out of this, 70% are, let's say, would like to engage with them for more than just voice and data, or to have them as a, let's say, digital transformation partners. Usually the cloud players are the ones that are chosen, but also the service providers have some 33% of them, let's say, are chosen by these decision makers. Why is this important? We will see later when we will talk about the ecosystem that is constructed in enabling 5G for business. But let's first see what lies, let's say, in front of 5G. So now we see in Slovenia that a couple of commercial networks are launched. First one was Telekom Slovenia already last year with a non-standalone on 2.6 gigahertz. But now after the frequency auction, we see that a couple of more commercial networks, consumer networks are there. So that consumer trend is ongoing. But let's see around the world what are the facts. So some 5G in numbers and how 5G is mature. So we see around, these are data from Q2 taken by the GSA Association. So 169 global live networks, more than 800 devices. So quite mature ecosystem of devices, mature number of networks live. Some of the markets are very, very advanced. For example, here I'm showing South Korea, where you have already now 53% of 5G device traffic. and they are consuming, and also in some of the presentations before, we saw that this data consumption will increase. For example, in Korea, we have 27 gigabytes, let's say, average mobile data consumption. In the circles, I'm showing Ericsson, basically 5G networks. Smaller circles are already standalone networks. As it was stated also in the previous presentation, it's starting up the standalone trend. If we see the previous generations of mobile communication, the first G, let's say, enabled the mobility. 2G and 3G enabled first glimpse of mobile internet, where 4G enabled, let's say, video and data, mobile broadband on a large scale, so-called the app economy was enabled by 4G. 5G shall enable the industrial use cases. It shall enable also the IoT applications. We see that with the 5G, we will have the trend of private networks. All of this together, according to some of our projections, we have a report, usually it's twice per year, it's called Ericsson Mobility Report. Our projections for 2025 are showing some 5 billion IoT connections. We will see if this will, of course, happen, but let's say everything is going into that direction. So the consumer trend is starting. We shall see now the wave of the 5G for business. My presentation was named 5G powered business. So what is 5G powered business? Basically, it's a business that uses 5G as a toolbox or as a platform. You can call it a buzzword, but what are some of the, let's say, characteristics of 5G that are crucial here for the 5G for business? Number one that I see, remote control. So remote controlling of some processes, which is maybe not possible to do it now. Real-time control together with the ultra low latency, you can do this kind of actions in the industry. Predictive, so using predictive analytics from the data that you will collect from all the sensors, because the network has the capacity to take this data from IoT connected devices and then take a next action based on this. Also building applications that are optimal, with optimal performance. What is meant here? For example, you are putting the application that are computer power hungry in the data center, and you're running the others in the edge, for example, that need a low latency. And all of this is applicable for the industries that are on the right. So it's not particular for one industry, but you can use these characteristics to enable these industries and solve some of their business processes. Is it automatization? Is it a remote control? Is it additional, let's say, analytics processes? So use this platform to enable it, to power it. As it was said also in the previous presentation, there is a more value in 5G than just what is stated now. So more than just speed and latency. Some of our analysis compared to land mobile radio, cables or Wi-Fi are showing that, for example, this is some of the rationale or studies that we have. These technologies are, let's say, less stable under constant load. You are running them on an unlicensed spectrum, so you cannot guard your applications. You cannot protect that somebody else is using that spectrum, which is quite powerful. They're not good in a combination in an indoor or outdoor coverage. So if you are covering a large, for example, area, a factory, and then you need to cover it also outside, these kind of use cases are not so well with these technologies. That's why on comparison, 5G characteristics are there, like built for mobility or security is built from the start. And the other one, like low latency and high speed. So comparison wise, we believe that there is a more than speed and latency to support the 5G as a technology of a choice for the industry. Important to say here is that the both operators and the industry shall not wait for 5G for some of the use cases to happen, because some of the characteristics of 4G are enabling some of the use cases. In top left corner, you see two terms, massive IoT and broadband IoT. And this kind of IoT use cases like inventory management, tracking and logistics, sensoring, monitoring, and video can happen already now. So asset sensors, inventory management, even automated guide vehicle guidance can also happen already with technologies we have. The other ones like critical IoT and industrial automatization IoT will happen later, and they will enable lower latency, and that's why they will enable also other use cases, collaborative robotics or automatization of assembly lines and their digitalization. So the point is that some of the use cases, the operators and industry shall not wait, shall start working together to create new use cases and implement them in the industry. What do we hear from the industry? So what do we hear from what is important for them? On the right side are some of the industries that are talking to us and want to implement this technology in order to automate some processes, to solve some business problems, to optimize their operations. I'll catch three of these that are catching my, let's say, attention. For example, I was not aware of this, but a lot of companies are looking for their data to stay local. So when we talk to some of the industry, they don't want to share the data from their business processes in the cloud. So they want a localized private 5G network or a 4G network, which will keep their data local. Another one, very obvious, of course, low latency in order to enable some of the processes they want to automate or they want to do it without wires. So it's a wireless. Another one, local survivability. So if you put a network there, it shall survive even if the let's say operator network is not available, because otherwise the business process will stop, and this is causing let's say a big losses for these industries. So how 5G for business can be implemented? I'll talk here about some concepts. So I'll not talk about the details how this is done. I'll talk about what concepts do we see. There are two. So first one, use the public network. So public network is the one that operators in Slovenia have. So managed by the operator, has a nationwide coverage, and can provide splicing. The other concept is a private networks. So managed locally, usually locally by the enterprise or the company. Local integration. So integrating with the IT systems of the enterprise, of the company, data stays local. And it's designed for purpose. So it's designed for some use case. It's not abroad just because they want to have a 5G network. So they define a use case they want to implement. They want to optimize some process, or they want to have a better connectivity, and that's why they implement it. The point here is to have a right network for the right industry. For example, in the countries, we will have existing network operators that will spread through the whole country, and there will be a couple of them. Then industries like public safety, rail, and utilities, they will need also nationwide coverage, but there will not be a lot of this kind of networks. But the other ones, like for example, in some countries, this is of course not one-to-one applicable for Slovenia, oil and gas, mining, defense, but for Slovenia, maybe manufacturing, logistics, and public venues. They will need a large number of these kind of private networks, but on a smaller scale, so smaller area covered. So 3 deployment types are possible here of this kind of 5G for business networks. Operator network, where operator builds the network in the whole country and then provides so-called end-to-end network slicing. Hybrid network, where the enterprise is using part of the operator network, but then it's having a dedicated enterprise core to serve the specific needs to the enterprise. And of course, the standalone private network, where everything is focused on the site, everything is purposely built for the company, and the private network is built on the use case. Network slicing, we believe, it's a possible solution for this digitalization from the aspect that you are basically using the existingly built physical infrastructure, and you are so-called slicing it for different use cases. You are guaranteeing end-to-end characteristics of 5G for these use cases. So you're not purposely building for each and every use case additional network. It's a powerful concept, and I saw also in the previous presentation, it was touched upon it. But in the 5G, let's say, standalone era that is coming, we believe that this will be a solution for a lot of operators to implement use cases that will come from the industries. When we speak about worldwide use cases that we are seeing, I'm here taking 5 of them. We have more than 50 worldwide engagements. I took some mix, so to show you that some operators started also with the 4G, and then but thinking with the 5G in mind. So setting up a network that is able to cover also 5G later. The first one is collaboration between BMW and Deutsche Telekom. So what they did, they created so-called dual slice hybrid network solution. They wanted to have a private network in their Leipzig plant, basically to control and monitor some of the production applications. But they had a need to create a slice for their public visitors and their devices, and a private network for the plant operations and the staff. So the solution was to create, let's say, a network, slice it on 2, let's say, distinctive slices, and enable this. And of course, this at the end enabled them to have a secure and reliable, high-performing network. The other, let's say, example, it's Atlas Copco, the smart factory. It's a cooperation between Atlas Copco Air Power, Orange, and Ericsson. Here, the challenge that they had was how to shorten the assembly times, how to transform the floor plans to be connected, smart, and how to get a better insights in the production process. So they set up a 5G ready network and connected all the PLCs, so programmable logical controllers, AGVs, so automatic guided vehicle cameras, and sensors into one network. As we said before, this network has a capacity and a bandwidth to support this, and to important guarantee and be highly reliable and available, which is important for these kind of processes, because we need to understand that if a factory stops, let's say we have a huge losses. So the point on reliability and availability is huge here. And as said, this enabled them to have a wireless communication between devices, connecting the device and taking the analytics and taking actions based on this. As I said before, so started with LTE, but then having in mind, putting it in a 5G perspective. Another collaboration we had with company Comau for flexible robotics. The challenge that they had was that they had so-called wired robots, and they could not transform the assembly line so fast as they want. Or if you're setting up an assembly line, you want to be flexible. So you want to move the robots or to set up for a new production, which is not possible. So solution that was used here is a 5G based on 5G URLCC characteristics, having 1 millisecond latency, which enable them that part of these robots are transferred in the cloud, making the robots more simple, easy to install, of course, wireless, and changing the logic how the assembly line is set up, and lowering the costs for implementing it, reducing the cabling, possibility to remote monitor the robots, provide preventive maintenance, and as I said, moving some of the components of the robots in the cloud. Other example is a 5G automated port in the Port Qingdao with China Unicom and Ericsson. The challenge that they had there was how to implement remote control of cranes, which is very applicable for any port. But as a concept, the remote control is applicable in other industries. So don't take this as a pure use case just for this one. Take it from the perspective that some of this one you can take also in other industries. This was not possible with 4G, let's say, or with Wi-Fi, because the bandwidth that they needed from some 30 high definition cameras that are used in this process cannot be guaranteed. And fiber was quite expensive to be and not flexible to be implemented here. So the solution was a 5G network with the high bandwidth and ultra low latency that can manage this kind of data volume. Some, let's say, savings that they got is around 70% of labor costs, and they implemented remote control of a ship-to-shore crane, which showed that they can transform the ports to have a remote control of this of the processes there, which is also the first challenge put there to increase the safety and efficiency of the operations. We need to understand some of the processes that are done now in the industries are very dangerous or hazardous. We have cases in the mining where we are doing now remote some of the operations in the mining because the technology is enabling us. So we are not putting people there. We are not putting them in danger. So we need to understand from that perspective also this kind of solutions, not just from pure, let's say, saving, profit, or other business interest. And I'm concluding with the last use case. It's a Mercedes-Benz, so-called Factory 56, where again, they use here it's used dedicated to private commercial 5G networks. You can see 220,000 square meters covered with our solution called 5G radio dots. Again, to provide, let's say, on-site secure data network. I'll put one analogy here. So in media, let's say the content is the king. In the sales, customer is the king, but here the ecosystem is the king. Why? Because there are three main stakeholders. Nothing of this is possible if one of them is driving the story forward or driving the initiative. So we need a technology partner, we need an operator, and we need an enterprise that is interested or want to implement or want to optimize something. So technology partner is basically creating or helping the operator to create a business case based on some use case. Then the operator needs to listen to enterprise and transform this into a solution that will be implemented at the enterprise. And enterprise, of course, needs to support and implement this. Of course, there are a lot of components other technology partner needs to train, to educate both the operator and enterprise, which we are also doing to raise the awareness there. Some key takeaways I want you to have from here. So digitalization of enterprise is happening with or without 5G. 5G can only speed it up with its value characteristics. And there are two main concepts here. So private networks or network slicing. And tailor-made use cases are key here. So you cannot have let's say, one fit for all. So you cannot have a single solution that you can really replicate in the industry. It's not a consumer market. It's a specific industry market where enterprise operator and the technology partner need to work together in order to implement it. With this, I finish my presentation. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Todorovski. Apparently, the future is already happening now. A tudi pri nas že stopamo v bolj svetlo tehnično prihodnost. Namreč podjetje Telemach intenzivno vlaga v mobilno omrežje prihodnosti, ki prinaša pravo revolucijo ne le za fizične uporabnike, temveč dejansko omogoča rešitve industrije 4.0. Odlične prakse v industriji in logistiki, ki že pospešeno prihajajo tudi v Slovenijo, nam bo predstavil član poslovodstva družbe Telemach, gospod Zoran Vehovar. Gospod Vehovar, predajam vam besedo.
Hvala lepa. Sami znani obrazi. Dovolite, da začnem majčkeno drugače. Danes se niti ne bi kaj dosti pravzaprav spuščal na samo tehnologijo, ampak poglejmo pravzaprav 5G v luči zgodovine. Kaj nas lahko nauči zgodovina iz tega, kje smo štartali z temi tehnologijami in kako so šle po korakih in pravzaprav kam nas pot pelje v prihodnost. Zdaj imamo praktično, če pogledamo, smo leto 2021, če čas zavrtimo nazaj za 25 let, četrt stoletja, smo nekateri, mislim, obraze, tukaj gledam znane obraze, opravili prvi GSM klic, takrat smo rekli, wow, pokličem majhna napravca, dobim nekoga drugega na drugem koncu Slovenije, ne ve, kje je, wow. Delali smo načrte in moram reči, da takrat, tudi če bi gledal science fiction filme ali pa si v najbolj divjih sanjah predstavljal, kaj se lahko zgodi v 25 letih, si seveda ne bi predstavljal, da imamo danes gigabitne hitrosti. Takrat cel svet skupaj ni spravil gigabita. Vsa komunikacija skupaj celega sveta ni bila gigabit, danes ga imate na enem mobilnem telefonu. No in poglejmo zdaj to zgodovino, takrat klic, popolnoma digitalen, wow, predtem je bilo že 5 let analogne zgodovine, v Sloveniji smo imeli 30 let, mislim, da prvih mobilnih komunikacij, na las, če rečem, mobilna komunikacija, ker voice oziroma govor smo že daleč presegli z tem, kar se danes gremo. In prišla je druga generacija, potem pa seveda dodali smo SMS, wow, spet nekaj super. Potem je prišel GPRS, neki začetki prenosa podatkov, počasi, mogel se imeti veliko živcev, da je šlo kaj čez, pa smo ugotovili, ne gre dosti, treba je dodati edge in tako naprej, ampak takoj se je začelo pojavljati že seveda telemetrija, dodajali so se senzori, začeli smo gledati, firme so začele, ne vem, vodovodi svoje črpališča vode nadzirati in tako naprej. Tako da potem pride tretja generacija. Wow, spet nekaj novega, hiter prenos podatkov, zgodilo se je še nekaj, standardizacija je prišla. Če se spomnite teh časov nazaj, zakaj govorim, ker je ključna tukaj pri vsej tej zgodbi standardizacija, če mogoče kakšen kje se gre pa naprej. Zakaj pomeni standardizacija? Poglejte, prva generacija, ki je bila razdrobljena, spet se učimo iz zgodovine, je bila praktično, imeli smo, ne vem, množico tehnologij po celem svetu, Severna Amerika, Japonska svoje, v Sloveniji smo imeli NMT, pa je prišel GSM, ki še zmeraj ni bil standardiziran po celem svetu, in počasi. 3G je že ciljal na cel svet, za 3GPP standardizacijsko hišo, 4G, zanimivo, je že standardiziran po celem svetu, 5G pa sploh. Zakaj je to tako zelo pomembno? Recimo, mi smo se dobili mesec nazaj za eno zelo uspešno slovenskim svetovnim proizvajalcem, ki ima sedež v Sloveniji, in so rekli, nas zanima rešitev samo, ki je globalna, ki je standardizirana za cel svet. Mi imamo proizvodne na raznih koncih sveta, karkoli bomo naredili, nas zanima samo globalnost. In seveda zato je standardizacija tako zelo pomembna. Potem seveda 3GPP je standardiziral 3G, ločeno prenos podatkov, govor in tako naprej, 4G potem nekaj teh pomanjkljivosti odpravil, uvedel je IP, kot internetni protokol, ki je pravzaprav danes prevladujoč protokol v omrežjih po celem svetu, praktično bo ostal edini. No in 5G, 5G pa pravzaprav se lahko vprašamo, je to samo naslednji korak. Kaj je pravzaprav tako posebnega na tem 5G-ju? Da še celo, veste, v Facebooku teorija zarote, zakaj ni teorij zarote o 4G-ju? Zanimivo vprašanje. 5G je dejansko na enem področju revolucija. Če pogledate zdaj to zgodovino, govor, prenos podatkov, dodajamo zmer hitrejši, zmer lepš dela, se vprašamo seveda, kdo so ciljni uporabniki teh komunikacij, mobilnih komunikacij. 2G, 3G, 4G je ciljal na ljudi, 5G pa ne cilja več na uporabnike, pač pa predvsem na stroje. Tu je pa ta revolucionarna razlika. Uporabniki seveda vidite plakate, vsi investiramo, operaterji investiramo, gigabitne hitrosti, plakati 5G po celi Sloveniji, to je še vedno namenjeno nam, uporabnikom, ampak zadaj se dogaja pa nekaj, v bistvu videli smo že use case, jaz jih imam tudi par teh uporabniških primerov pripravljenih, industrija pospešeno vstopa v to, ker želi, kaj je problem industrije? Seveda, vsi ti roboti, vse te naprave so povezane lahko tudi žično, brezžične tehnologije, ki bi pa pravzaprav to mobilnost, da se vse nekaj dogaja, veste, imate dvigala, imate vozičke, imate logistiko, vse se premika, to ne morete po žicah povezati. Kakšne možnosti ima na razpolago industrija? Industrija uporablja že eno tehnologijo, ki se reče SCADA, mislim, že 30 let, pa je že več kot iztrošena z ogromno pomanjkljivosti, pa še zmer tle, zato ker pravzaprav ni nič nadomestilo tega. Wi-Fi, deloma ja, ampak zdaj si predstavljate neke take, bom pokazal par tehle primerov, recimo farmacevtsko industrijo in tako naprej. Tam se vam ne sme zgoditi, da je eno omrežje zabasano, morate imeti kontrolo nad tem konektivitijem, v celoti, mora biti zelo hitro, zelo zanesljivo in ne smete biti odvisni od tega, da mogoče v bližini je en fant neki downloada, mogoče pa vam je zrušil za to komunikacijo v tovarni. Tako da 5G cilja na stroje in zato je podlaga za IoT, za internet stvari. Tle pa seveda, da se bo to uspešno uresničilo, prej smo že slišali od Aleksandra, lepo ekosistem, seveda mobilno omrežje se mora odpreti, zdaj če si predstavljate, zdaj so bila mobilna omrežja nekako zaprta, uporabnik, firma je prišla, ki je hotela imeti neko telemetrijo, ki je tašnega prišla, pa je kupila 100 SIM kartica, jih je odnesla, jih je vtaknila v neke modulčke, neke napravce in začela pač koristiti prenos podatkov. V 5G temu več ne bo tako, če govorimo o milijonih senzorjev, ki so razmetani povsod, v napravah, v, ne vem, senzorjih prometa, kjerkoli, milijoni, milijarde, pravzaprav svetovno gledano, ne morete več za SIM kartično dotikati, ne morete vsake posebej pine odtipkati in tako naprej, zaradi tega pravzaprav rabi industrija direktni dostop do mobilnega omrežja, bodi si zasebno, bodi si javno omrežje in ta omrežja, zato smo mi mogli, pravzaprav moramo ta omrežja odpreti na ven. Odprti vmesniki, imate ekosistem. 5G je connectivity enabler, zgor nek voziček, neko podvozje, ki je varno, zanesljivo in predvsem enako po celem svetu. Neka BMW, ki postavi tovarno na Kitajskem, v Avstraliji ali pa v Nemčiji, bo postavil popolnoma enako rešitev po celem svetu. Se pravi, globalizirano, spekter poenoten, operaterji verjamemo v to, kupili smo letos spektra, mislim, da je bilo 160 milijonov evrov smo skupaj dali za spekter, pa tudi investiramo, recimo Telemach 2 letih, 3 letih 100 milijonov evrov približno v ta omrežja, to se pravi, operaterji res verjamemo v to. Industrija sledi, mogoče v Sloveniji malo bolj počas, po svetu tudi. Kot rečeno, rabite pa ta ekosistem. Spodnje podvozje, enabler, odprto proti vertikalam, standardizirani vmesniki, end-to-end rešitve, varnost in to se bo zgodilo. Seveda, ključen problem tukaj bo seveda digitalizacija. Prej smo od gospoda Di Felice slišali digitalizacija industrije oziroma sektorjev. Tu bo seveda ključno, da bodo sektorji sledili za razvojem tega, seveda vidno dobre prakse po svetu, ki prihajajo tudi v Slovenijo. Na tehnologijo se ne bi kaj dosti spuščal tukaj, seveda to je izjemno, če vzamete 3GPP standard, izjemno lepo zamišljeno, ker je 3GPP kot standardizacijska hiša je vzela v obzir najmodernejše zadnje IT tehnologije. Govorim IT, ne networking. Networking je krasno rešen spodaj, kot so odprti vmesniki, REST, kot so virtualizacija, recimo, robno procesiranje oziroma MEF, cloud computing, umetna inteligenca in tako naprej. Ker to, kar vi zberete z teh milijonov senzorjev, je treba pa obdelati z nekim namenom, z nekim ciljem. Šel bom čez nekaj primerov, kako to delajo v svetu. Slišali smo že prej, navezal sem na Aleksandra, podobni primeri, mogoče malo z drugega zornega kota, mislim, da 6-7 primerov. Moram reči pa, da tudi v Sloveniji se pojavljajo že primeri, bolj pa še na začetku, ampak kot rečeno, veste, če pogledate zdaj to zgodovino naprej gor, to bo v 3-4 letih močno spremenilo industrijo, pa ne samo industrijo. Navezal sem se tukaj v teh primerih na industrijo, pa predvsem na logistiko. Logistika je že po neki naravi mobilna, veste, logistika se dogaja. Logistiko morate neki izdelek spremljati, premika se po naravi per se, zaradi tega je pravzaprav 5G toliko primeren za samo logistiko. Arena 2036 je nemška velika raziskovalna institucija, ki pravzaprav dizajnira tovarno prihodnosti in tukaj seveda izkorišča 5G v smislu testiranja, pripravljanja take tovarne. Ključni elementi so, posod boste videli AGV, Automated Guided Vehicles, ker v industriji rabite, ali so to roboti, ali so neki vozički, neka vozila, ki dovažajo rezervne dele oziroma sestavne dele, odvažajo izdelke, vedno imate neka vozila. Tukaj je 5G zelo usmerjen v ta nadzor teh vozil. To ne pomeni vaši domači avtomobili, da boste volan spustili, pa se bodo sami vozili, to je manjši del te zgodbe. Večji del zgodbe so pravzaprav industrijska vozila. Skupaj združenje in kup podjetij pripravlja tovarno prihodnosti. Podoben tehnološki center, ravno v Nemčiji, neimenovan, ki združuje množico startupov, financiran s strani države, delno, je postavil 5G in testira robote, robotske roke, vizualne preglede, recimo, in omogoča pač članom validiranje te tehnologije. praktično vse nemške tehnološke tovarne sodelujejo, večje, pomembnejše v tem raziskovalnem centru in validirajo to tehnologijo. Bosch, poznamo Bosch, en tovarno je že postavil kompletno v skladu z industrijo 4.0, to se pravi kompletno avtomatizirano, digitalizirano na osnovi 5G zasebnega omrežja. Seveda vse deluje na osnovi vozečih vozil, robotiziranih senzorjev po robotih in tako naprej. Nad tem pa je postavil AI platformo, to se pravi big data, vse to zbira in potem obdeluje in nadzira proizvodnjo. Lufthansa, zanimivo, to pomeni, da si predstavljate, da vzame tablico, en nadzornik, letalo je pristalo, gre okrog aviona in pobere vse iz senzorja, iz motorja, vse parametre, vse nastavitve, vso zgodovino zadnjega leta, recimo vse pobere iz senzorjev na tablico in mu validira, ali vse ok, ali mora kakšne dodatne teste narediti, vse narejeno na 5. generaciji. Zakaj se je bila tudi kakšna druga tehnologija? Je pa varna, end-to-end enkripcija, zaščitena, hitra, odzivna in to omogoča pravzaprav Lufthansi, zakaj, oziroma uspešno uporabo 5G-ja za nadzor. Rode Schwarz, če se ne bi zanimivo, Kitajci so zelo daleč s 5G-jem, ogromno. Zdaj sem slišal, da imajo 13 milijard senzorjev že postavljenih na Kitajskem. Največji proizvajalec v Evropi, ga ne poznamo kaj dosti, FAO, je pravzaprav ima največjo svojo tovarno že popolnoma, Changchun se imenuje, popolnoma digitalizirano. To bo prišlo tudi k nam. In seveda vsa komunikacija med stroji poteka na osnovi 5. generacije. To da seveda poveča produktivnost, zanesljivost in dejansko spreminja ta proizvodni proces od začetka do konca. Farmacevtsko podjetje, tu recimo 5G, mislim, prejšnje generacije pač ne bi bile primerne za farmacevtsko industrijo, ker morajo biti izjemno zanesljive, kratki odzivni časi, kvaliteta izdelka seveda je ključna in tukaj brez tega podvozja enablerja ne bi šlo. Pa kot rečeno, spet po celem svetu, globalnost je tukaj ključna. Če ni globalnosti, velike firme ne bodo v to skočile. Tako da, hvala lepa. Jaz mislim, da tako kot smo vidite 5G, smo rekli wow, danes smo prišli do sem, ko smo in ko bomo se srečali čez mogoče 10 let, bomo rekli, wow, ja, kaj se je zgodilo v teh zadnjih 10 letih na tem področju. Hvala.
Gospod Vehovar, hvala lepa, da ste nam prikazali tale osupljivi potencial tehnologije 5G. Tehnologija 5G res očitno spreminja podobo sveta, saj je že vstopila v komercialno fazo aplikacije tudi v različnih industrijskih vertikalah. V Huaweiju so ponosni na številne primere odličnih praks, kako tehnologija 5G nadgrajuje obstoječe industrije. O konkretnih zgodbah nam bo več zaupal Igor Milivojevič, tehnični direktor za centralno in vzhodno Evropo ter nordijski predel v Huawei Technologies Ljubljana. Gospod Milivojevič sodeluje v številnih nacionalnih iniciativah, posveča pa se tudi standardizaciji tehnologije 5G in umetni inteligenci. Kako torej 5G nadgrajuje obstoječo industrijo? Prisluhnimo gospodu Igorju Milivojeviču. Mr. Milivojevič, the digital stage is yours.
Thank you. Hello to everyone and greetings to all the participants. I hope you can hear me, see me well, and also see the slides that I'm sharing. So yes, on behalf of Huawei, my own, much appreciation for being able to join this event and having, let's say, an exchange on a very relevant topic of 5G. So what I would like to share with you all is, in a way, an industry trend snapshot and also share with you some of our commercial and technological practice that we are delivering with our partners and customers in the market when it comes to deploying 5G for enterprise and industry sectors. Now, also as mentioned several times today, and this is probably one of the or the most relevant context of deploying 5G for industries is digital transformation. The numbers are quite obvious in terms of the adoption of the enabling technologies for digital transformation across industries. 5G plays a very interesting role with its capabilities, with providing seamless connectivity across different types of equipment. And we have been working extensively with directly with enterprise and industry players, very much through our partners in the form of service providers and operators. And the role of operators together with the ecosystem that they will be also contributing to is very interesting, not only in providing the connectivity, but what we can see as an increasing trend is also being able to focus also on cloud platforms and even specializing in specific industries with also integration capabilities. Of course, all these things can be done by developing this kind of know-how within the operator, but also which is more likely together with the rest of the ecosystem. The available market, both for operators and their partners and the ecosystem, when it comes to connectivity, infrastructure, service enablement applications, is quite huge. And this is something where this collaboration of the ICT and OT technologies and in a way a convergence of those will let's say be the main tool to explore these kind of opportunities. Today, for all of us, I would say China has become a very good reference in terms of engaging 5G for industries. And the fact is that this is obviously a market with the most extensive, most pervasive 5G rollout today, not only in the consumer, but also in the business segment. A couple of years ago, it all started with, let's say, quite clear consensus between different players, different stakeholders, including vendors, operators, integrators, the public sector, industry players, of course, in recognizing and positioning and adopting 5G as a strategic choice for digital transformation and efficiency across industries. And it's all started, of course, with research, testing, trialing, validating, and today already throughout last year and this year, we're seeing a scaled replication of these use cases, a large number of projects which are already bringing quite, let's say, remarkable revenue for the operators and their partners. And especially what has been recognized are valuable industries, which are in a way the first wave of adoption, including ports, manufacturing, and mining industry. Now, in a similar fashion, like we have in the consumer segment, where the availability of smartphones, especially the, let's say, budget levels of smartphones, are essential for the wider adoption and acceleration of the proportion of users that we have on 5G networks. Similarly, the availability and the price of not only CPE, industry-specific CPE, but namely 5G modules, is essential for accelerating these use cases. Especially modules allow us to seamlessly integrate with different kind of industry-specific machinery endpoints throughout those environments that we have in the enterprise and industry verticals. And we're experiencing worldwide, especially very much driven by the suppliers from China, but also other places, is the drop in prices in 5G modules. This is a very interesting trend, which also opens up opportunities for local suppliers around Europe, regardless, even I would say, from the size of the market, to explore and to work on solutions that will natively be 5G connected. And this can actually be, let's say, the case for different kinds of sectors and industries. Before we go to industry-specific cases, in fact, what we have been practicing very much with operators is, let's say, the very first step in enabling and engaging 5G. And this is as simple as the 5G private line in a way, but still a very appealing, let's say, technical and business proposition for the enterprises and also, of course, for operators in providing a better connectivity based on the, let's say, essential, let's say, functionality of 5G, which is eMBB. This is very much true from the very early stage of deploying 5G around Europe, delivering and offering 5G private lines. Through this, operators were able to increase the market coverage, combining in many cases the 5G offering with fiber and serving mainly, I would say, SME sector-specific use cases such as school, hospitals, or specific scenarios like camping areas, tourist areas, gas station, electrical vehicle charging station, and so on, making it, let's say, a good technical and business proposition, especially in situations where other technologies are not available, where we have a large footprint of, for example, of DSL and copper connectivity, and making it, as said, as a kind of a quick business win. But then, when we go to more comprehensive scenarios, then we're definitely talking about standalone implementations, combinations of specific configurations for public networks as well as dedicated private networks. What you can see on this slide is the case that we have delivered together with our operator partner and the integrators for IKD, practically the biggest car part manufacturer out there. And they have positioned very clearly 5G as a key technology that will support their operational business goals in the next couple of years. One main scenario is creating a full digital twin of the factory floor and the whole production environment, including using, of course, 5G to connect, let's say, real-time requirements of endpoints, but also monitoring endpoints that are used for automating and executing the manufacturing process, and fully uploading this rich information for further optimization and adjustment based on cloud processing. Again, one very well recognized use case that has been established not only in the manufacturing industry, which in a way I would say gained maturity already, is relying on the uplink capabilities of 5G, and that is the video-based quality inspection based on high-quality video streaming coming from the production line to the cloud. We have been working with a large number of partners in this project, including what turns out to be very important is a large number of partners that are able to deliver specialized industry-specific CPs, as well as terminals, industry terminals with embedded 5G modules to allow, let's say, seamless connectivity based on 5G. In fact, we have practiced this very same thing in Huawei's flagship smartphone factory in China. The use cases that you can see here are, I would say, already for a while very well recognized to bring value to production environments, and now fully delivered through 5G. One of the use cases, which is controller-to-controller collaboration, will be deployed by the end of this year, but the rest of them are already fully up and running. The benefit, of course, from the infrastructural point of view is removing this massive amount of cabling, which is not only quite expensive, but also very inefficient when it comes to reconstructing the whole production line, which is, in fact, quite, let's say, frequent case in these kind of production environments, which require, let's say, fast production line reconstruction from time to time. Now we have also seen today the cases about ports. Obviously, China has been a market that has recognized, because of the strategic importance of the transportation logistics sector, the importance of introducing more productivity, better efficiency in these environments. So these things, of course, rely on 5G architectures, customized architectures focusing on low latency but also high reliability design that is spanning from cloud to the very feeding points for the radio signals, and also replicating some of the use cases, but in this situation, of course, customized for the port environment, including intralogistics based on AGVs, intelligent video inspection and recognition for improving the tally process and so on. But one of the things which has been quite a concern in many ports, regardless, of course, whether we're talking about China or other markets, is definitely having the fact that these are harsh environments in terms when it comes to safety. But also the other challenge that ports in, for example, in China have been facing is also the inability to find enough workers that are willing to work on cranes, for example, and also the fact that these are not very, comfortable environments being outdoor in those cabins throughout the day. At the same time, ports have also identified that after a certain number of years of working in those cabins under a certain position of the body and spine, additional health problems arise. So let's say, remote crane control has been realized by moving all those workers into a more comfortable environment surrounded by 4K video footage that replicates and actually provides a real-time experience on site, and providing real-time remote control of the cranes from a centralized room, in a way transforming this job from a blue collar into white collar job, I would say. Staying at the scenario of logistics and transportation, in fact, we have just recently delivered with our partners in Hungary the 5G realization of the 5G dedicated network, focusing on remote crane control, so delivering a highly redundant, reliable, low latency architecture based on 5G. And this is the one of the biggest intermodal railway hubs in Europe in question, relevant for the continental level, but also intercontinental level logistics, and currently being probably the most modern intermodal hub out there in this part of the world. And let me conclude with the use cases with smart agriculture. This is something which is, I would say, quite relevant for European markets. And although 5G connected drones with all the envisioned scenarios and capabilities are yet to be, deployed in more scenarios with a more scale deployment, we have still validated and engaged 5G in connected drones for smart agriculture with our partners in Switzerland, using the scanned images from that the drones are sending to the cloud in order to inspect the position locations of duckweeds, and automatically, based on this recognition, automatically dispatch machinery for treating those unwanted weed. And this is, of course, a scenario contributing to this maximizing the efficiency of this whole process, but also is a part of the precision agricultural capability, minimizing the use of pesticides and herbicides. So all in all, when we compare, deployment of 5G in the consumer segment versus industries, in industries we have a much more diversified environment in terms of, let's say, the premises, indoor-outdoor combinations with specific reflections, and which actually require a specific radio planning and positioning of access points, and the radio network architecture. We have diversified SLA requirements, diversified architectural requirements end-to-end, and 5G, of course, is not alone in this picture, because we're mostly talking about environments where we need the collaboration with cloud, edge computing, AI, and so on. And therefore, in realizing the scenarios and implementations for 5G in industries, let's say a comprehensive approach spanning planning, construction, maintenance, and of course automated the lifecycle management, full lifecycle management of these kind of solutions is needed, and approaching to this must be also standardized so that these things can be easily replicated further within the same industry. And this is why platforms that provide full automation and intelligence in order to run these environments are quite important. At the same time, starting from our early work, research, all the way through larger commercialization across industries, we have also derived and helped operators to package these kind of capabilities and services into commercial offerings based on a standardized model, defining scenarios of networks, defining the choice of 5G network attributes, and also identifying which kind of specific services and models of integration services are needed for specific industries so that they can be combined and offered to the enterprise and business users. And this is, in a way, another dimension apart from the technical one, apart from the purely technical one, which is in a way essential, especially from the operator point of view, to be able to accelerate the deployment and have a scaled replication within one or multiple industries. Obviously the implementation of 5G for industries is something that really shows the value and importance of the ecosystem collaboration, starting from the public sector, operators, vendors, standardization, and of course, let's say extending this synergy together with the players that are specialized in industrial solutions. Today, we are delivering projects for more than 20 different industries in a customized and standardized manner, either directly or in many ways through operators. We're delivering currently a large number of projects and running more than and executing more than 1,000 contracts. A couple of years ago, as we all remember, it was very much about identifying these use cases and identifying and exploring the values with, let's say, early validations. Today, we are in starting the wave of a scaled commercialization, and a lot of these practices, I would say standardized practices, we have summarized and released through a series of white papers where we are summarizing and laying out not only the architectural principles for different industries, but also sharing the ecosystem collaboration models, the business design and business models that can be used to replicate for different users, different industry, and something that, of course, hopefully the interested parties and the ecosystem in Slovenia can also benefit from. So with this, I would like to thank you once again, and really appreciate joining you today. Hope to see you all soon in Ljubljana. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vilimojević, for this glimpse into Hungarian, Swiss and Chinese solutions. Zdaj pa nazaj v Slovenijo. Slovenci se radi pohvalimo, da smo narod inženirjev, inovatorjev in pionirjev. Še posebej ponosni smo, ko to prepoznajo tudi drugje v svetu. Eden izmed takšnih vizionarskih poslovnih partnerjev je podjetje Iot, ki si je Ljubljano izbralo za globalni razvojni center svojih novih tehnologij. Iot razvija tehnološko napredne komponente, s katerimi lahko v celoti izkoristimo potencial 5G omrežja. Z nami je danes direktor Iota za Evropo, Bližnji vzhod in Afriko, gospod Steven Totida. Predstavil nam bo pri nas razvite rešitve za mikro- in milimetrska valovna mobilna omrežja. Mr. Totida, I'm honored to invite you on stage.
Dobro jutro. So with that, I apologize. My Slovenian is not that good to give a presentation. But I did want to thank everyone for joining this morning. And what I'm going to talk about is a combination of the benefits, the socioeconomic benefits of 5G, and coupling that into the GDP growth. And then I have a special portion of the presentation where I'll specifically talk about Iot. I came to this presentation this morning from far away, my apartment in Trnovo. So, but this is the very first public presentation that I've given since the start of the pandemic. So
So I'm actually very excited to be up here in the podium. Aviat Networks may not be a company that you know, but we're an incredibly important part of the ecosystem for the 5G future. Obviously, mobile networks impact the way we work. They impact the way we play. And our teenagers, if you have them play, they don't seem to do anything but use their mobile networks. It also impacts the way we learn. And that has been really pronounced here during this pandemic in terms of distance learning. And 5G will change everything. It's a very important transition in the mobile networks, and I'll talk a little bit about why that is. One of the most significant new aspects of 5G is the very, very large amount of new spectrum that's been included. And you can see here in this particular chart, from 24 gigahertz to approximately 86 gigahertz is part of the new spectrum. They call this millimeter wave. And in the future, it will go all the way past 100 gigahertz. This is very, very high frequencies. But those high frequencies bring very important attributes to the rollout of 5G. And you can call millimeter wave the fundamental building block of 5G. In terms of the socioeconomic benefits, this is a chart from the GSMA, and you can see, even in the next few years, billions of euro in new GDP will be generated through the use of 5G. And by 2034, that is approximately 1.8 trillion euro. And of that, they estimate about €500 billion will be directly related to millimeter wave, the portion of 5G. When you look at the types of use cases that will be used in this new environment, you can see these mapped against enhanced mobile broadband, ultra low latency networks, massive machine type automation networks. And you can see these different use cases across the verticals. And primarily, they are the industrial verticals, which you heard about today, whether the Mercedes-Benz factory in Germany or one of the factories in China that you saw from the previous speakers, in the areas of healthcare, transportation efficiency. And this is where millimeter wave will play a very important role. This is a little bit more detail in terms of where these different use cases map relative to the economic benefits. And again, primarily in the area of transportation, industrial, and healthcare. And you can see that the adopters of 5G technology will be primarily the large developed economies. And you can see the benefits outsized compared to some of the other emerging economies. And then if you look at the infrastructure, the area that's colored in the blue are primarily the infrastructure components related to how those signals get to the base stations, not necessarily from the base station to the handset, but the infrastructure that powers these mobile networks. And 5G will also be used for fixed wireless access. This is very high-speed connectivity to your homes, to your businesses. And again, millimeter wave will be a very important part of that. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the technology and about how that's developed, but multi-gigabit links, the ability to move 10, 20 gigabits per second wirelessly, can only be done with millimeter wave. And you can actually combine millimeter wave and more traditional microwave technology to develop links that not only are 10 times or even 20 times higher in overall capacity, but they can actually extend 5 times in length by blending these technologies. And again, this is part of the new infrastructure being developed for 5G. And the most important part is that it's iz Delano va Slovenia. Okay, and that's where Aviat comes in. Aviat's a technology company. It's a relatively new name, which was created in 2010, but the company itself dates back all the way to 1953. And about a decade ago, Aviat acquired a small company here in Slovenia, a company called Telsima, and we've turned that essentially into our technology base for all of Aviat globally. So we have a large number of technology professionals here, and Aviat, of course, as a global company, is supplying to 3,000 different individual customers around the world. Some of our customers have 300 million subscribers as a mobile operator. Right? Some of our customers have a few million mobile subscribers. Some of our customers are governments, national governments. Some of our customers are private. But we're really excited to be part of this new technology. And I thought presenting here in Ljubljana, that would be an honor to represent Aviat. You can see the types of products that we develop. In fact, in our Terezin facility, just a few kilometers from here, we develop not only the radios themselves and the fundamental millimeter wave technology, which our team has been working on for a decade. So it's not new to the engineers here, but it's very new to the overall 5G market as it rolls out. We also have a very sophisticated set of testing and test labs, and we actually do all of our production test engineering work for our global supply chain, where we do our manufacturing. So with that, I wanted to thank everybody this morning. And again, it's a pleasure to be here. And when you think about 5G and you think about all these advances, you can think globally, but at the same time, you can recognize that there is a supplier that's part of this global ecosystem right here in Ljubljana. And we're very proud of that. Thank you.
Mr. Tutida, thank you, and we are proud to have you. Pionirske projekte, dame in gospodje, pa izvajajo tudi v Telekomu Slovenije, kjer so še pred podelitvijo novih frekvenčnih pasov že omogočili uporabo tehnologije 5G v obstoječem frekvenčnem spektru, vse z namenom, da bi spodbudili razvoj virtualnih namenskih omrežij za zdravstvo, logistiko, energetiko in druga ključna področja znotraj ene same fizične infrastrukture. S podelitvijo namenskih frekvenčnih pasov pa, kot bo pojasnil Andrej Kranjčevič, vodja raziskovalnih in razvojnih projektov pri Telekomu Slovenije, 5G postaja vse pomembnejši dejavnik uspeha tudi v poslu. Gospod Kranjčevič, izvolite.
Dober dan. Mogoče malo nehvaležno sem zadnji na vrsti. Tukaj. Ok, super. Ja, ne bom utrujil z tehničnimi podrobnostmi 5G. Pravzaprav danes smo slišali že večkrat o tem, kaj 5G je, kaj 5G obljublja, kaj prihaja, tudi o zasebnih omrežjih, o use casih in tako naprej. Tako da na začetku majčkeno moramo, na hitro, na brzino. Torej 5G 3 pomembna področja naslavlja. Eno je ta enhanced mobile broadband, torej naše telefone, tablice, to, kar danes uporabljamo. Potem sta pa neka dva nova listka ali pa dve novi področji, massive IoT, torej neke naprave in pa mission critical control, to je pa neka avtomatizacija, neka industrija, neka kritična komunikacija. Ta dva področja sta nova, ta dva področja sta tista, katera 5G primarno naslavlja. Tudi število tele bulletov, ki jih je, nekako lahko kaže na to, da 5G ni primarno za ljudi, za nas, za naše telefone. 5G je primarno za neke naprave, za neko industrijo, za nek poslovni svet. Torej, zasebno omrežje 5G. O tem smo danes že slišali. Imamo recimo, da imamo dva pomembna tipa, pa dva taka različna tipa zasebnih 5G omrežij. Eno zasebno 5G omrežje je dejansko neko nadomestilo nekega Wi-Fi-ja. Torej, 5G omrežje lokacijsko omejeno na nekem področju za neke specifične potrebe, bodi si v proizvodnji, bodi si za nek namen. Torej, zaprto, lokacijsko, lahko je več takšnih lokacij, recimo v Sloveniji lahko neko podjetje ima več proizvodnih lokacij in na vsake od teh lokacij je neko zasebno 5G omrežje in to skupaj potem povezano. So te lokacije skupaj povezane, potem imamo tukaj 3 različne primere. Prvi primer je zgolj ta nek radio na lokaciji, nek podaljšek nekega radija. Primer B je, da je poleg tega radija, poleg tega omrežja na sami lokaciji še neka oprema zaradi različnih razlogov. Lahko zato, ker podatki ne smejo zapuščati te lokacije, bodi si zato, ker je potreba po obdelavi teh podatkov ali pa po zakasnitvah pri obdelavi teh podatkov takšna, da te podatki, če bi zapustili tisto mesto, kjer nastajajo, bi bila zakasnitev prevelika. In pa seveda primer C, gre pa za popolnoma izolirano omrežje, zgolj za tisti namen na tisti neki lokaciji, brez povezave z nekim, recimo, javnim omrežjem ali pa z nekim zunanjim omrežjem. Torej, najprej ta primer A, torej nadomestilo Wi-Fi-ja. Tukaj smo že danes slišali neke use case, zakaj bi se to uporabljalo. Bodi si je to neka industrija, neka proizvodna, neka tovarna, kjer danes se stroje povezuje z žicami, torej so te stroje vžičeni, ali pa sploh ni neke pameti distribuirane, pa gre za centralno pamet. Do sedaj so bile tukaj možnosti, ali uporaba Wi-Fi ali nekih namenskih radijskih tehnologij. 5G tukaj omogoča, da dejansko prevzame to vlogo, te povezovanje in potem lahko v tej tovarni, v tej proizvodni liniji, lahko imaš ti to proizvodno linijo veliko bolj prilagodljivo. To smo slišali tako v predavanju od Ericssona kot od Huawei-ja, torej ta prilagodljivost, da lahko stroji so danes v enem vrstnem redu na liniji, proizvajaš nek produkt, jutri jih razporediš, proizvajaš 2 ali 3 drugačne produkte z istimi stroji. Ne rabiš teh strojev kable vleči pa tako naprej. To omogoča recimo 5G, ta use case. Drugi je pa zasebno 5G omrežje kot rezina javnega omrežja. Torej, imamo javno omrežje, katerega vsi uporabljamo danes. 5G prinaša rezinjenje tega omrežja. Pomeni, da lahko neka stranka, neka vertikala, za nek use case ima lahko svojo rezino, svoje virtualno omrežje znotraj tega javnega omrežja. In na tem virtualnem omrežju, na tej rezini je možnost zagotavljati kvaliteto, torej quality of service. V dosedajšnjih tehnologijah od 2G do 4G ni bilo mogoče zagotoviti, da bo neka stranka, neka naprava, nek primer uporabe imel prednost pred ostalimi. Večinoma so bili vsi enaki, neke prioritete ni bilo mogoče garantirati. Lahko si nastavil neko prioriteto, ampak ni bilo mogoče garantirati. Z 5G, z tehnološko spremembo, ki je ne samo na radiju, na tem, kar trenutno vidimo kot 5G, na telefonu 5G znakec pa gre malo hitrejši, ampak z spremembo v samem jedru pri operaterju je možno vzpostaviti rezine omrežja in te omrežne funkcije potem ponuditi strankam na voljo, da se te omrežne funkcije so zgolj za njih, nastavijo po njihovih željah in zahtevah in se lahko zagotovi neka kakovost, nek quality of service. In potem tukaj imamo naštete različne vertikale ali pa primere od neke industrije, nekega meteringa, torej nekih distribucij, komunal in tako naprej, javna varnost, torej pol bomo pogledali tudi primere iz prakse, ki jih imamo, pa raziskovalne primere, telematika, torej neka avtonomna vozila in tako naprej. Tista avtonomna vozila seveda bodo zahtevala neko kritično komunikacijo in ta komunikacija mora biti ločena od Facebook ali pa Twitter ali pa TikToka, ki ga uporabljajo vsi ostali, ne? Zato, da se zagotovi tista potem healthcare, AR, VR. V tej korona krizi smo malo ugotovili, da tisto, kar je bilo, recimo je leto pa pol ali pa 2 let nazaj, mogoče za lase privlečeno ali pa se je kazalo kot neki showcase, pa smo malo dvomali, ampak zdaj smo videli, da pravzaprav tudi ta dogodek je sicer hibridni, ne, ampak po dolgem času je to priložnost za tak dogodek, še ne dolgo nazaj so bili vsi dogodki virtualni, tako da tudi ta AR, VR del, da lahko nekdo nekaj naredi ali pa sodeluje nadaljavo, postaja bolj pomembno, no, kot pa smo do zdaj nekako pričakovali. Zdaj, če da te rezine še dodatno malo razložimo, torej rezina omrežja, režemo lahko to javno omrežje na več načinov. Imamo tukaj 6 različnih stopenj. Lahko to omrežje režemo povsem na radiju, torej ima stranka samo zgolj svoje frekvence, svoj radio, lahko je pa vse do konca, do jedrnega omrežja operaterja je lahko ena rezina, ne. Tako da tle je dinamika ali pa neka možnost, kje nek use case ali kje neka stranka želi svojo privatno omrežje, je veliko možnosti. Seveda je pa to povezano s ceno. Torej, bolj kot uporabljaš javno omrežje, nižja je cena oziroma strošek takega zasebnega omrežja, bolj kot želiš biti samostojen, več kot želiš elementov imeti sam, višja je cena takega omrežja. Tako da tukaj je potem potrebno neko ravnovesje, kaj dejansko se potrebuje ali pa zahteva, pa kako smo si to pač pripravljeni privoščiti. Zdaj malo na hitro še o projektih, ki jih izvajamo na ozemlju Slovenije. Zdaj smo veliko govorili o nekih projektih iz tujine, ampak tudi v Sloveniji smo zelo aktivni, tako mi kot operater, pa kot tudi slovenska industrija in pa stranke, tako da smo zelo aktivni tako na praktičnih dejansko razvojnih kot pa raziskovalnih projektih. Meni je ta slika zelo všeč, je od Ericssona, ampak lepo demonstrira različne primere uporabe in pa tehnologije, ki nekako so dovolj dobre ali pa ki nekako lahko uresničijo te primere uporabe. Če govorimo o nekem smart meteringu, torej o nekih napravah, nekih števcih, te števci ne rabijo 5G. Te števce lahko danes realiziramo z obstoječo tehnologijo. Neko sledenje, neka logistika, neke sledenje nekih naprav, to lahko danes realiziramo. Ne rabimo 5G. Ja, 5G je potem tista tehnologija, ki bo naredila vse še veliko lažje in veliko bolje, ampak lahko štartamo danes, lahko danes naredimo nek poslovni model in ga potem s 5G samo še nadgradimo. Če pa govorimo o nekih avtonomnih vozilih, o nekem krmiljenju nekih energetskih omrežij, o neki robotiki v industriji, današnja tehnologija, torej 4G ali pa 5G, tako kot ga poznamo, non-standalone, ni dovolj dober. Rabimo pa potem tisti, recimo, v narekovajih pravi 5G, standalone 5G, z milisekundno zakasnitvijo, z tem ultra reliable low latency komunikacijo, torej s to zanesljivostjo, z rezinjenjem in tako naprej. Tako da, odvisno od tega, kje kle na tej zalici se use case nahaja, se ga lahko lotimo. Če se nahaja na levi strani, se ga lahko lotimo danes, lahko danes realiziramo, če je na desni, se lahko njemu začnemo pogovarjati, ga razvijamo in ko je tehnologija zrela, implementiramo. In še enkrat malo bolj podrobno, torej, kako smo se mi lotili, te vertikale smo razdelili na neke 4 vertikale, pogledali smo, kaj je use case znotraj posamezne vertikale in kaj ti use case zahtevajo, kaj je pomembno. Vsi zahtevajo povezljivost, brez povezljivosti ni ničesar. Vsi zahtevajo kibernetsko varnost. To morda dostikrat pozabimo, ampak je eno od najbolj ključnih zadev je kibernetska varnost. Nič ne pomaga, če imaš ti še tako pametno rešitev, če ti jo nekdo pokvari. Zdaj, radijsko pokrivanje pri tej povezljivosti, torej namestilo Wi-Fi-ja, pa neko omrežje, torej network as a service. Zdaj, če potrebujemo rezine, potrebujemo 5G. Če ne potrebujemo rezin, LTE, narrowband kot subset LTE je čisto dovolj dober in potem se lahko lotimo realizacije teh use caseov. To smo mi naredili v Telekomu, ne bom razlagal vseh ostalih IoT rešitev, torej rešujemo ta del tle, massive IoT, broadband IoT, teh stvari, ki jih lahko danes delamo, jih delamo. Imamo za to platformo, predvsem so tukaj pametna mesta in pa vse vertikale znotraj pametnih mest, parkirišča, števci vode, toplote, elektrike, plina in tako naprej. Na drugem koncu, torej tisto, kar danes ne moremo še čisto narediti, tista industrijska avtomatizacija, imamo pa raziskovalne oziroma razvojne projekte. Danes vidim, bo na okrogli mizi bo tudi profesor Herakovič iz Fakultete za strojništvo. Z njimi smo naredili raziskovalni projekt, kjer smo v laboratoriju postavili in 5G omrežje. Zakaj? Ravno za tisti primer, ki smo ga imeli tam, torej tovarna pa Wi-Fi nadomestilo kablov. Torej, oni želijo iz neke centralizirane kontrole tiste pametne tovarne v distribuirano kontrolirane tovarne, torej da so te roboti samostojni, povezljivi preko 5G in na ta način imajo to pametno tovarno realizirano. Raziskovalni projekti potem so v Luki Koper, to je zelo primer iz področja logistike, torej spremljanja nekih produktov oziroma nekih kontejnerjev skozi pristanišče, od takrat, ko ladja pripelje v pristanišče, do takrat, ko ta kontejner na tovornjaku zapusti pristanišče. Torej spremljanje kontejnerja, spremljanje zaposlenih, spremljanje tovornjakov, dvigal in tako naprej. Zato, da so te stvari pod nadzorom in to je raziskovalni projekt v Luki Koper. In pa 5G Jana, ki je pa raziskovalni projekt z področja avtomotiva, torej avtomobilske industrije. Tukaj pa potem ta samodejna vožnja, torej daljinsko krmiljenje vozil, usklajevanje manevrov, če imamo tovornjake, ki vozijo po avtocesti, da je ta platooning, pretočnost parkirišč in tako naprej. To so pa potem ta raziskovalni projekt z tega področja. In to je to. Tako da, upam, da sem bil 15 minut. Hvala.
Gospod Krančevič, hvala lepa za vaše razmišljanje in te praktične primere. Tudi v Iskratelu moč 5G vidijo v manjših zgodbah z velikim družbenim učinkom. Skozi implementacijo mobilnih podatkovnih omrežij so namreč opazili, da so zasebna omrežja v resnici eden ključnih elementov digitalizacije industrije in družbe nasploh. Jure Zajc, produktni vodja za program 5G pri Iskratelu, nam bo skozi primere iz prakse in nasvete za usmeritev v prihodnosti pojasnil njihovo vizijo in strateško usmeritev podjetja. Gospod Zajc, izvolite.
Zdravljeni, hvala. Zdaj ste malo probam. Prezentacija je pripravljena v angleščini, tako da spremenim angleški ton. So, welcome from Iskratelu. I'll be talking about application of 5G technology for private business sector. In the agenda, we'll take a look at industry trends and market potential, industry drivers for private networks. We'll take a look also at private networks value chain, a short overview on Iskratelu product initiatives, application of 5G technology, telco and vendor partnership, and what have we learned from private LTE. So in terms of industry trends and market potential, there's a lot of analysis out there. Everybody is looking into private campus networks. We definitely understand that this private campus network is a market and it is growing. at the moment is, of course, being serviced with private LTE. And in terms of demand that we're seeing out of all those researches is that mainly manufacturing, energy and utility, transport and logistics, for example, and also public sector is showing high demand for private campus networks. And in terms of market maturity, we kind of expect that, again, based on those analysis, that market will mature somewhere around 2025. Industry drivers for those private campus networks. Of course, everybody that's looking into digitalization needs to have a connectivity. So connectivity as a base is definitely a digitalization enabler. Having a mobile network with good coverage, reliability, and speed is definitely something that is important. And of course, 5G promises to be unified and secure by design. Regarding applications and technologies of 5G, we probably all seen this triangle numerous times. I wanted to skip it in this presentation, but then at the end decided to keep it in. So here are three main promises of 5G technology. One is enhanced mobile broadband. Then we have reliable low latency and massive IoT connectivity. So the question here when we were thinking about private campus network as a product is, can you get away with servicing only one of those functionalities? But more or less, we kind of find out that if you want to have a concrete private campus network, you definitely need to cover all those functionalities. In terms of value chain for private campus networks, of course, we have from devices to services. And also here, Iskratel recognized that we will focus on our core competences, for example, connectivity and platform. And because we expect that market will demand end-to-end solution, we'll definitely need to fill those gaps with partner ecosystem applications and other things on top. When designing 5G Core as a product, we focus on some key initiatives. For example, 3 key initiatives. Of course, they were based on market trends and the research and information that we got from customers. First is definitely 5G Core is something that needs to be fully standardized. So it needs to be compliant with 3GPP standards. And in theory, that allows Iskratel to be able to integrate with anybody else that is following 3GPP standardization. Adjustment and configuration is a possibility to reshape the purpose of the network. So using configuration or adjustment, for example, you can add additional edge locations and boost user plane and completely change the look and feel of the private campus network. And the third one, which already mentioned, we definitely need to focus on partner ecosystem to allow us to offer end-to-end solution. In terms of offering that Iskratel has prepared, definitely we start with platform that we can service now with Iskratel Cloud Platform. On top, we're building connectivity layer, meaning either private LTE or 5G core networks. And on top of that, we have applications. So either a voice application or any other applications aimed at the digitalization. And of course, this layer of applications is expected to grow over the years and needs to be expanded with partners. If we take a look at this in more plastic view, so with our Iskratel is now also a part of S&T Group. So together with partners within S&T, we can supply from hardware to application to cover concrete end-to-end use cases for specific industries, of course. Now a bit about application of technology in 5G. I guess we all seen a lot of use cases, a lot of promises. So I also included those in my presentation. For example, 5G railway and transportation. When we are discussing about railways, we're always discussing about future railway mobile communications. That is not fully standardized yet, and we all expect that this will come in later years. But still, transportation can also offer a good opportunity for 5G networks already now, either with the set of sensors or something else. You can treat transportation or train as a small factory with a lot of sensors. Farming is also a good example for application of 5G technology. For example, there's a lot of automated guided vehicles aimed at big, smart farming operations. So with centralized data storage, you can offer fleet management, remote access, remote maintenance, and above all, control your automated guided vehicles fleet. The same case goes for mining. That is also a good case for 5G or private campus networks. This also relies heavily on automated guided vehicles. You can have network underground that is completely private, of course, and you can use automated guided vehicles in specific locations that are dangerous to humans, and humans are on a safe location on top operating them. Regarding telco vendor partnership, we believe that harnessing both strengths of telcos and strengths of vendor can offer a great opportunity for developing IoT market. For example, the strengths that telco brings to the table is, of course, global connectivity, large ecosystem, and telco is already servicing business sector with 5G speed matching existing technologies like fiber. And on the other side, vendor has a clear understanding of industry. It has good consulting skills adapted to this target market. It has go-to-market channels, and it can offer customized approach to specific either industry or either clients. As already mentioned, we are already working on private campus networks with private LTE technology. So what have we learned from there? In 2020, for example, we had interest for around 30 projects, mainly from CIS region. So in that region, there are companies like oil, gas, mines, railways, airport, high on the list. Manufacturing, public institutions, and test-beds for telcos are second. But we are still seeing some demand in that area. And what we found out, that key drivers for private campus networks in that case were mission-critical communications, integration of legacy communication. This is also something important for them. And we also seen some interest of narrowband IoT in early stages. So for example, a specific case for a mining operation in this region, a client asked for private campus for connectivity of 3,000 subscribers. 500 of those subscribers had the need for, or have the need for mission critical communications. And it was all done with local telco in terms of partnership. So that's a quick recap from my side. So thank you for your attention.
Gospod Zajc, najlepša hvala za vaš prispevek. Spoštovani predavatelji, najlepša hvala za vaše ideje, za vaše primere, za vse, kar ste podelili z nami. Cenjeno občinstvo, hvala za vašo družbo in seveda tudi za vse tiste, ki ste z nami prek spleta. Dobili smo kar nekaj odličnih idej in namigov za nadaljnje razmišljanje in seveda tudi poglobljeno debato. In zdajle si jo bomo lahko privoščili z ostalimi udeleženci med odmorom za kosilo. Ob 13. vas čaka okrogla miza o priložnostih, ki se skrivajo v tehnologiji 5G. Povezovala jo bo kolegica Katja Mohar-Bastar, ki je ob tej priložnosti digitalno predajam svoj moderatorski mikrofon. Naj pa za konec z vami podelim še navdihujočo misel slovitega tehnološkega prebojnika Steva Jobsa, čeprav smo danes o njem enkrat že govorili. Zapisal je naslednje besede. Tehnologija sama po sebi ni tako pomembna. Pomembno je, da ohranimo vero v modrost ljudi, da bodo tehnološka orodja, ki jim jih izročimo, uporabili za dobre stvari. Tako, zdaj pa resnično hvala lepa za vašo odlično družbo in kmalu nasvidenje na katerem od naslednjih odličnih dogodkov Združenja za informatiko in telekomunikacije pri Gospodarski zbornici Slovenije. Hvala lepa.
With innovative 5G-powered technology, preventive maintenance on the track and the ability to react faster to obstructions is possible. Our solution consists of a system of rotating drones wirelessly connected to the driving train that acts as a charging, connectivity, and data processing platform. The drones scan the tracks and infrastructure ahead of the train at a distance equal to the safe braking distance of the train. Inside the cabin, the train driver has a visual video stream of the track ahead, overlaid with warning information produced by artificial intelligence. This way, the driver can better evaluate the oncoming situation and take proactive measures such as reducing speed or braking. On top of this, for very high-risk situations, the AI system can automatically initiate an emergency brake. The ambition is to bring to market a full end-to-end solution, including custom installation, hardware and software licenses, and an SLA agreement. We are flexible when it comes to commercial models, CAPEX, OPEX, or a percentage of cost saving calculated by a reduction in the number and severity of incidents. If your train stops on time, it's because our drone is ahead of its time.
Prišla je revolucija. Več 3.0, več prenosa podatkov, neomejeni klici, sporočila in 5G hitrosti v vseh mobilnih paketih več. Vse to za vse uporabnike. Čas je za boljši mobilni paket. Čas je za lahko odločitev. Čas je za več. Telemach.
Izbrana publika, dragi gostje. Torej, vabljeni na zadnji del današnjega dogodka, okroglo mizo o priložnostih za razvoj novih rešitev na osnovi 5G. Ker imamo gosta iz Digital Europe, gospoda Alberto Di Felice, bomo to okroglo mizo naredili v angleščini. Mislim, da to ne predstavlja posebnih težav nobenemu od nas. Tako da bi jaz potem kar preklopila na angleški jezik. Welcome to the last part of this event, the roundtable, opportunities for the development of new solutions based on 5G. First of all, I would like to thank to the organizer to invite me to moderate this roundtable. Secondly, I would like to welcome you all to Slovenian Digital Center. Hopefully, we will see you again here at as many occasions possible. Today, we've heard many solutions and user needs in the 5G field, different technological solutions and new business models. Our roundtable will give us some face-to-face debate on virtual and physical level between policymakers, European overview, the view from technology provider, and the need from the users. So let me introduce the speakers today. My name is Katja Mohar-Bastar. I'm Director of Digital Innovation Hub Slovenia, and my guests are Ms. Mojca Jarc, Head of Electronic Communication Division at the Information Society Directorate at Ministry of Public Administration, Mr. Alberto Di Felice, Director for Infrastructure, Privacy and Security Policy at Digital Europe, Mr. Alexander Todorovsky represents the information and communication technology provider Ericsson, who provides the services and technology to service providers. Professor Dr. Niko Herakovic, Head of Manufacturing Technologies and Systems and Head of Laboratory LASIM, Faculty of Mechanical Engineering, University of Ljubljana, and Mr. Boris Shajnovic, Head of Project Management Office at Iskra. Let me start with the lady. Ms. Mojca Jarc. In Slovenia, the frequency auction for the 5G frequencies was this year. Operators are now building networks which will be primarily dedicated to business users rather to widening the broadband pipe for end users. Which are the directions from the state for the usage of those frequencies in the Industry 4.0, health, public services, transport in 5G sense?
Thank you.
Dila?
It's working. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the questions, and also good afternoon from my side. I'm not quite, when we are talking about the building networks and your questions that the networks will be primarily dedicated to business users, we must not forget that the services for end users are our final goal. Of course, it's true, the multi-frequency auction was closed this year. In doing so, however, I must highlight the coverage obligations for all frequency winners prescribed by the agency in call for tenders, which indicate that these frequencies will provide publicly available broadband services to end users. Let me just list few main obligations, namely within 3 months, operators must start offering services to end users in at least one band in at least one of the 11 major cities in the Republic of Slovenia. Further use, the operators have to use all frequencies within 5 years and offer services in at least all 11 major cities. They also have obligations to cover 99% of motorways, 60% of main and regional roads, and at least 60% of active railways. These days, the radio spectrum strategy for the next 2 years is in the process of being approved. And the main technological breakthrough is expected in the field of broadband mobile electronic communications, which with 4 and 5G technologies represents a future technological platform for broadcasting, public safety, protection and rescue, and for private mobile radio communications. New business models are one of the major growth generators. Of course, more detailed forecasts are risky, but they all point to strong growth. the quantity of connected devices and data transfer requirements will increase, both in terms of quality parameters, among which the delay is crucial. Verticals and the use of spectrum in everyday life will gain in importance in the field of e-health, smart car, connected house, entertainment, smart grids, and probably something else in the future. But let's keep to your questions. How important and which are the directions from the state for the usage? We believe that it's important for market stakeholders that spectrum is allocated so that business opportunity offered by verticals are made possible on this basis. And we of course believe that industry will seize all business opportunities. But it seems more and more that the story has also the other side. And contrary to today's view, when we strive for wide access and use of broadband technologies, these days, for instance, I read in the newspaper the text with anthropological content, which mentioned digital totalitarianism when devices accompany us at every step. And I believe that probably more reflection on this is likely to be needed in the future. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We will return to some of your statements later on, also with Ericsson and others. But right now, I would like to ask Mr. Di Felice. 5G was a common action in the European Union some years ago, and most of the countries already started achieving goals from the 5G toolbox. What is the state of the EU market at the moment? Can you share some best practices with us? I saw that already before in your lecture, but can you give us some advice while we are not really in the maturity phase of this technology, but what are the most important conclusions? Did they already learn something from their actions, from the trials? And what shall we take into account while implementing 5G technologies?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, so I already tried to provide a very basic snapshot, mostly using data that is publicly available through the 5G Observatory, about how the network rollout has been happening over the course of the past few years, really, and months, most importantly, around Europe. And I think the story of the deployment of 5G, starting from its regulatory antecedents, is quite interesting to look at for Europe. We should remember, as you said, that 5G a few years ago was really one of the key strategies that the European Commission put in place. And back then, the story was that Europe had been lagging behind in LTE deployment. And we didn't want the same mistake to be repeated for 5G. And a number of things were announced, a number of strategies in an effort to align the timelines in all the member states. As I said, there was also an important push on the regulatory side to look at a reform of the ground rules for telecoms regulation with a comprehensive reform of the electronic communications code. And the end result sort of is a mixed bag in the sense that I think we have fallen trap to many of the pitfalls that we had with LTE deployment, largely because of what I can define a depressed European market, where we have done an excellent job regulating telecom services, so much so that on average prices in Europe are extremely low, which tends to drive the amount of money that telecoms operators can spend on deploying new networks down. which means that there's less of a demand pool in Europe in deploying now consecutive generations of mobile technologies. And that pool has been bigger elsewhere because of public action, but also because of clearer commercial opportunities. Both South Korea and the US will be good examples there where we saw commercial deployments considerably earlier than in Europe. Clearly, we are starting to see commercial offerings picking up. Europeans will have access, and I think the numbers of rollouts will be increasingly naturally in the next coming months. But again, we will continue to face that challenge of being slower in implementing networks. Part of that has also been, to go back to the regulatory piece, part of how slow we have been in assigning spectrum in Europe. This is a key area that regulators and policymakers tried to address with the reform of the code. We haven't been able effectively to reform how we do spectrum assignments in Europe. Member states have proceeded with different timelines, and on average, we are very late compared to the goal of assigning all target bands for 5G by the end of last year. As I showed, there's a mixed bag in the sub-gigahertz bands, where 50% of those bands to date in member states have not been assigned, and the situation is even worse for the 26 gigahertz band. So I think these are, if you will, long-standing regulatory conundrums that we have in Europe. I am confident that, partially also because we do regulation very well, in the long term, we will see deployment. Obviously, there is also quite a lot of work that we need to do on the demand side and working across ICT, telecoms, and vertical industries to make sure that all the use cases that were described by various speakers at this conference can actually come to fruition, and we can actually use the connectivity pool as a lever to effectively digitize various sectors of the economy so that we can have them more competitive in the global race to innovate in technology. The next question is, what scenario does this pave for the next generation of wireless technologies and 6G, but maybe we can discuss that at a later stage.
Yes, thank you very much. Professor Heraković, today we invited you as the 5G technology user in the Industry 4.0. What are your experiences with the technology? Do you actually use 5G in the smart factory or your laboratory? Before we heard you are collaborating with an operator, Telekom Slovenije, to test how it would work to use 5G in smart factory. Can you describe the development? Was the cooperation between all the stakeholders, the vendors, the operator, between you, the user? What are the achievements and what did you learn from this phase?
Thank you for the word. Yes. We could be called as users of 5G technologies, but not. I would not put it in such context, because we are laboratory, we are university, and we are doing this for research purposes here at university. So why we decided to do that? Actually, a few years ago, we developed this smart factory laboratory or demo center, where we introduced all key technologies of Industry 4.0. And we discovered that because we introduced edge technologies, we discovered that the communication processes were not so good. So we had problems with that, because in smart factory, communications between different objects and subjects are very, very important. That's why we started to think about 5G technology. So last year we came into the contact with Telecom. We wanted to contact also other vendors, and at the end we decided, or the telecom found us at the end, I would say, and they were ready to install it. Now we have this installed for almost, I think, 8 months, something like that. It is working. We are now testing how it's working, and we want to do more research, basic research and so on, especially in what possibilities are, for example, to use it later on in the industrial project or industrial environment, because everything what we do, what we research here in the laboratory, we transfer this into industrial environment. And we have a lot of problems already in the industrial environment with new technologies, because they need really reliable connection, reliable transfer of data. And we don't have this because they use different IoT technologies, and these different IoT technologies are not so reliable. The most reliable transfer of data is still wired transfer of data. And if you want to be flexible, and smart factory is and should be flexible and agile, it is very, very important to have this reliable network. So we believe that 5G is one of the technology that could solve those problems that we have in the laboratory and that industrial partners have in their environment. So from this point of view, we are users, yes, but in the moment we are more or less the users on the research level, let's say.
Thank you very much. So how would you solve, Alexander Todorovsky, how would you solve this problem? Would you still keep them on wire? Or what are your views on already said? And are we seriously lagging behind in Europe? Shall we perceive differently the 5G? Or tell us from your technology view, please.
Thank you. I'll address first your first question about are we lagging behind? So in general, and what was said in today's presentation, we can see that Europe is lagging behind. So there are reasons for this. First reason is the allocation of frequency spectrum, what was said before. The second reason is also market is very diversified. Basically in Europe, we have a lot of players, a lot of operators versus US or China, where you have several operators and they can focus the investments there. So they are focusing the investments on 2 or 3 operators, while in Europe you are investing in 20 or 30 operators, and all of them are investing in the infrastructure. Somebody will ask, okay, why do you need 3 or 4 infrastructures in a single country? But that's a Europe reality, and this is slowing the things a lot. So we are now basically deploying, you can say, consumer networks. So we are not still deploying, or we are not working to deploy business or industry oriented 5G. We are, if you see in Slovenia, we are now deploying 2 or 3 networks for the consumer. So if we correlate to today's event and the purpose, in general, Europe is lagging behind in 5G, especially in the approach towards the business. But okay, I mean, there is a way forward. I believe that what was said today, also the European Union and Commission have a plan, and when frequency spectrum starts to be freed or allocated, then advanced services will become more available. So that would be my answer.
Thank you very much. Boris, I will call you a user as well. I know you mostly from the smart cities field. We already worked together on that field. I know the importance of 5G technology. Is that how important is that for implementing the services into smart cities? What are your demands from service providers? which characteristics from the 5G technology smart cities need? Can you describe us a bit of this, please?
Yes, thank you, Katja. Thank you for invitation here in the name of company Iskra and me personally. Iskra is trying to be a player, and we like to say that we are a player on the smart city market, where we have the, let's say, the picture what smart city should be. Some solutions for that are today presented as smart cities could be covered with some other technologies, but what we wanted to do and what we are doing and trying to do in Maribor is this specifically, trying to provide us the solutions that could be, that are only possible with 5G network. Here we have one bigger risk, maybe not from telecommunication sides, from, let's say, like what did you discuss before, but we have a lack of chips of 5Gs. We are producer of energy meters, for example, of different sensors, of different actuators, let's say like that. But when we started the project, there was only one main supplier and there was no stock for it. So from this side, we had to be innovative, what Slovenians really are. And we did some hybrid for now. We will do it, we will upgrade it to the real 5G when this will be possible, and trying to bring the solutions for the people that we are doing and providing smart city solutions that where we try to put the people in the front, or the citizens of the city, so they would live in the city and don't even feel the technology that is happening behind them for them to have a better quality in the life.
Thank you. And maybe that explains a bit my statement when I asked Mojca the first question. Of course, all the industry, all the business, everybody is doing things for the people, of course. Everything is for the end users at the end. Now let me continue with something we all look at, that's DC index. How do you expect the implementation of the 5G technologies or the spectrum allocation will impact the overall result in the DC index of Slovenia? We know that Slovenia slipped for one step last year. We know all the member states are investing in the development, but is it possible that the auction this year will help us with this index, or can we hope for a better result or to achieve some better position on this ladder? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very tough question, but of course, we hope that the implementation of 5G technology will have a positive impact on the DC index. And how important is the implementation of 5G technologies, let's say, for the results of the Republic of Slovenia? We can see from the fact that the European Commission exposed in the explanatory notes to the DC index some main facts regarding the multi-frequency auction, namely in a draft document, DC index chapter for Slovenia, dated in July this year. But of course, it's a draft for the time being, and we didn't receive the final document yet. But the fact is, however, that the DC index is about relative relationships, both between the measurement indicators and between the countries, between the all 27 European members. During this year, in 2021, on average, as far as we know, all countries actively worked to implement 5G technologies. So the final results cannot really be predicted. And regarding the question, if we can gain some more steps, we believe, of course, that improvement or to gain more steps on the DC ladder is possible, but basically on the basis of the radical changes. Yeah, of the more radical changes, more than just 5G.
Okay, so also other.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Mr. Di Felice, before you already started with forward-looking new technologies like 6G, which users will need the new technology the most? Will it be again dedicated to end users, to consumer side, or is it dedicated to somebody else, to maybe other like business or somebody else as the user?
Yeah, no, so I mean, we're now really in the initial phases of 6G, of thinking, in preliminary steps toward 6G. I think that the first thing that we can say is that probably we'll see a similar dynamic, at least in the initial phases, as to what we saw with 5G. We should probably remember that the early phases of 5G were largely about the verticals. So catering for the first time for a great variance of use cases that the technology could be deployed with. We saw that the market reality of the actual launch of the technology was very different. And like I said, the demand pool, even though I was arguing that it's very relatively weak compared to other parts of the world, but really it comes from the consumer side of things. So the extreme mobile broadband capabilities enabled by 5G, which doesn't mean that the evolution of 5G, both from a commercial standpoint and as part of the subsequent releases of the standard, will not continue. And it will be geared more and more toward bringing the vertical use cases to fruition, moving towards something that can be at the intersection of vertical use cases and enhanced consumer experiences, such as the feature of extended reality, for example, where you can have a number of applications to the technology. And it's logical to see that 6G will continue along that evolution path, where effectively, I think this time the focus will need to be on augmenting those extreme use cases that may start from, again, advanced deployments in industrial or public, if you will, contexts, as opposed to pure consumer use cases, even though clearly that will also comprise a big part of the demand and a big part of the use cases. But I think, right now, for what we can see, definitely there is that idea to sort of do what was promised with 5G in a bigger fashion. And again, we're only at the beginning of envisaging the use cases. In a few years already, I think we'll have a much better picture of what industry is able to deliver in the first 3GPP releases that will look at 6G.
Thank you very much. And I will use your answer also to the question to Professor Herakovic. If you would have now open hands and it's up to you what the networks will provide to the industry in the future, what would you demand from the industry side, from the laboratory? What would you wish from the best to happen?
Thank you. Now, as you discussed already, we are lagging behind, and it's everything is. For us, is going quite slow. So it takes took quite a lot time to get, for example, that installment that we have. Now we work with 3.5 gigahertz. Probably it should be, this frequency should be higher. Then, it's always like that. It should be pure 5G. We don't have pure 5G. We have a little bit of 4G and 5G and so on. So this technology is, in my opinion, is introduced too slowly, not so fast, because there are a lot of needs in industry and also in laboratories. If you want to introduce something into industry, industrial environment, some new technology, it's not so easy because they live in real life. They don't have time to play with different new technologies because they don't know exactly what they bring. So they must be reliable. These technologies and industry must know what is awaiting of them if you introduce new technology. So we can show them this only in the case that we have different use cases, first in laboratories that we can test. So here we are already 2 years too late, in my opinion. And this is what should be done in the broader, I would say, in more cases. I don't know how many cases there are in Slovenia, but we are one of them, and it's still not working as it should. But it's not the telecom difficulty. Telecom is okay. They gave us everything and support us a lot, everything what we need. But it's still, I think, we should need more professional, let's say, 5G technology. And then, of course, this research that should be done should be more intensive in the future, should be supported also from the government. For example, we were asking for one project for the government for 5G for this research. We didn't get the money now. It was refused. It's not. I mean, I cannot understand such things because if we want to introduce new technologies, we should support also research in this direction. And then, because we work a lot in industry, I know where it is really necessary to introduce this technology. Many of users say, well, it's not so important if it's 1 second reaction time, 5 second reaction time, 1 millisecond reaction time, but it is important. It is very important if you want to introduce this into real systems. Because, for example, if you take a worker, we have one project in one industry where we guide workers in real time, and if the system doesn't react in 1 second or 2 seconds, so it's already a problem because he's waiting for the system to tell him what to do. So we need systems and technologies that are fast. So that's why I think, I don't know what 6G will bring, but it is important that technology that we have, that we introduce faster, that we get more support, also financial support and so on, that we can do research on this and transfer this knowledge into industry. Because industry will not just take it like a cake. So this is my opinion.
Thank you very much for your opinion. I see Alexander is nodding, so probably you already have some answers or some thoughts on this.
No, I just wanted to say that, I mean, this is completely right. I mean, this, as we said before. So in order to implement something, you need to have it fast on either in the university area or on the field. So this ecosystem I was speaking before will be built. So another component in this ecosystem is the university, because they have the power for, let's say, R&D, and they can develop use cases that can be then brought easily to the industries to implement. Because this is what we are lacking. We are lacking some kind of cohesion between the ecosystem players, so they can realize that what we are kind of preaching about 5G is realistically and can be implemented. So at least personally, I'm lacking this kind of a cohesion between the players. Maybe the reason is because they're focusing now more on the consumer segment, and this one is left a bit more something to come after. But the points that Professor has are right. I mean, in order for him to work on it, he needs it now, and he needs it faster. So technology is there. So it's a matter of sense of urgency with all. Mm-hmm. So they can start implementing. Nothing else. It's not that it's not available. We are seeing this in US, in China. That's a reality. What I was showing is not something that will not be implemented. Some ports are implementing or others for remote operations. So it's there, but you need some drivers to push it.
What about the chips?
Okay, yes. I mean, there is, okay, I mean, if you listen on the news, you can receive different information that, I don't know, this will last for 3 years or it will last for 1 year. Nobody knows. Nobody has a crystal ball. But the situation will improve for sure because you have several trends here. So one trend is chips are made in Taiwan, but EU wants to build factories for chips. US is building factories for chips. So this will kind of, it will ease the burden. So it's currently, I mean, consumers are buying everything they can, and this put the pressure on that fund. Plus you have some policy issues. But I don't see this as a really, I hope it's not that kind of a bottleneck that will stale the industry or worse to be declined. So I believe this will be improved.
Okay, because I know that Professor Herakovic will have to leave soon, I will just ask you one more question. Do you have enough students?
Enough students?
Yes.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes, I think I must say in this way that in last few years we are getting more and more students, especially our laboratory, because we really use advanced technologies, Industry 4.0 technologies, and we really have a smart factory demo center that works as a real smart factory. So students are coming, yes, and if just the money, we are lacking the money, I would say, the finance of this research, because if we want to do something, we have to go to industry and earn money to make the research, and this is a huge burden. So here I would expect more support also from the government, or I don't know, from European Union, that it should be easier to get smaller projects, not big projects 5 million, 10 million, but probably smaller projects also that would give a lot of results, could give a lot of results with smaller groups that have this possibility to make research. Now, when we apply for the project, it takes a long time, and we invest a lot of money into this, you know. If two people are preparing projects all the time, you have to pay for these two people just to write the applications. So this is a huge problem that we have in Europe. I think it's not going in the right direction, in my opinion, and it's the same in Slovenia.
Okay, so it's too much of administrative burden for these projects and to get funded for the research and development. Yeah, we've met on some tenders as well. So yeah, I know about this problem from our side as well. So I'm really glad to hear that interest from the young people to move into the STIM careers. That's really nice and forward-looking. Boris, what are your future activities? You said everything is on 5G in smart cities. You are trying to develop the services mostly in the smart cities. We were talking before about the delays for a second or two. Does it happen as well in your case? How do you think it will be improved with the new generation and with new technology?
Yes, we are working in smart cities, especially on the fields of traffic, energy, and as well we try to build a smart factory. Some of the production lines are already very smart, some aren't, and we are building the cases which are still not, that we still couldn't cover with current technology, that we have access to it or the knowledge. So we are very, very welcome, Mr. Herakovic, to our company to find to build the cohesion between everybody and also the Ericsson company to build jointly solutions. I would like to also, before everything else, I would like to say also and support Mr. Herakovic's thoughts that even the government and EU has to fulfill the funds for the R&D. Why? We currently in Slovenia or in Europe, we are fighting with, as we stated before, with the larger markets, which are maybe a little bit more quicker, a little bit more, let's say, currently better than us on some ways. And we need help, actually. As a company, we cannot found everything from the market that we get. We need funds, and every time when there's a list of projects that didn't been founded, and there's no money left from the grants, for me this is disaster for the EU and for the government. Why? Because you have one big pile of the projects that could happen, that could be recognized maybe later on the market as perfect, but this never happened. And if I return back, what we are trying to do, yes, the lack in the traffic is very important. Many times when we are discussing how to offer this solution from the technical point of view, we return to the cables, because we get the right processing time only on that technology. And this, if you look the tables and all this technology, this is very old technology. This is not new technology. And we don't want to lose the processing time of the whole solution, because if we are discussing about traffic, if we get a signal that something happened on the market, this on the crossing, on the level crossing, for example, we need this information in our processor very quickly, in less than 100 microseconds, and this could be done with 6G. With 5G, I'm not sure, but so the cases are here. The cases are somewhere written at our company that we are waiting to offer, but still we cannot work because technology a little bit far from us. We cannot cover everything by ourselves, and this is why we are building the consortiums, when we are building the smart solutions that we are providing now through the gates of the smart cities.
Thank you very much. Mr. Di Felice, may I ask you again to repeat the programs which are preparing now on European level to found the new technologies in future years? I remember that there was such an amount of billions of money that I couldn't remember all the numbers. But...
Yeah, no, I think there's specifically on the money that the various pockets and the various funds that can be spent on connectivity. There's four main types of funds that are available. There's the Next Generation EU program, which is the core fund for the resilience facilities, so the recovery funds. This is the biggest pocket of money, out of which 130 billion are specifically allotted to digital. So connectivity will be a part of that 20%. There's strategically, historically, the structural funds, where we can use a pocket of 6 billion in the current cycle for digital networks. So this will be particularly important for underserved areas. A similar focus historically went through the CEF, which is the Connecting Europe Facility, roughly 2 billion euros for the broadband fund. Similar focus on underserved areas, but also the big developments on the corridors that I mentioned. So some of the flagship deployment and testing capabilities at European level. And another fund that we shouldn't forget is the EFSI, so the Fund for Strategic Investments, when it was launched. And then there's also for next generation access. So for broadband deployment, there's another 2 billion. that are available. This is obviously in addition to the funds that are allotted by the EU specifically for research. In some cases, you are saying testing, development that clearly have a direct link with research activities. And clearly that's a very interesting discussion to have. I sympathize with all the labor and pain that goes into the process of submitting tenders to get all these funds. Certainly, we should not underestimate that this is an administrative process in and of itself. We probably shouldn't oversell either what that administrative process can do and what the funds can do. I think it's important to acknowledge that these funds, particularly those for deployment, can be a very effective lever to generate momentum in the market, address some gaps in funding that are there, and facilitate effectively a public-private partnership whereby public funds can also help private actors deploy networks, which is ultimately the goal. We should not be under the impression that we're solving everything through public funds, particularly when it comes to technology development, because it is a reality for decades now that most of the innovation or R&D capabilities have come from the private sector. So we're spending public money in areas where it does make sense to spend public money, so that we're effectively covering areas that are not covered effectively. And if we do it well, like I said, we can generate positive dynamics between the private and public sector in academia, for that matter, so that we can have the aggregate technology development that we need for our industries.
Thank you very much. Very useful answer. And we really have to think about this administrative burden to tenders and to public funding. I know, Muca, that you are not directly involved into public funding. Maybe do you have any future plans for building open networks? And I know that there was a tender recently, right? But what are the plans for the future?
I'm sorry, just want to say I have to leave now. So
yes, thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
It was a pleasure to meet you.
Yes, as you mentioned, we have already open tender named Gosho 5.
Already.
Yeah, already Gosho 5. It's open, and it's planned to have another one call in December. Yeah. And as it was mentioned, the plan funding recovery and recovery funding.
Yes.
Yes, it's planned for the electronic communication, let's say for information society, electronic communication, building networks. It's planned, I think, 30 million euros. And now we are also talking about the for the next financial perspective also to have certain amount for open networks, but it's not clear yet.
Okay, if I may just use your first thought you had. Alexander Muca mentioned that demands of the tender for frequencies also included fixed wireless access. I saw in your presentation it's one of your offer items. So do you collaborate with somebody to cover some white spots, gray spots in Slovenia?
Basically not for this area, for let's say Osho or Gosho in Slovenia, but yeah, the fixed wireless access can be a solution for these areas, because it's a cheaper solution than building fiber. But so far we didn't saw that much of an interest, so we need to, let's say, put maybe more focus there, but jointly together, maybe with the government or the to see if there is a potential to use, but not Ericsson as Ericsson, because we are working mainly with the operators. So usually we are working with an operator to implement a solution, even for the industry or because that's the business model we are operating. But yes, fixed wireless access can be alternative for fiber, and on other market it's a reality, and they are implementing. Especially we know about this in US, Australia. There are strong propagators or implementators of fixed wireless access. Yeah, so it's ready, it's there. Just need an, let's say, interest to maybe change the perception that you don't need to build fiber everywhere, but you can cover maybe with the public network, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, is there still a percentage of how much fiber must be laid into the ground, or how much what percentage can be supplemented via mobile or something else?
No, I don't think that we have such condition or something.
Okay.
Yeah, we only have the condition that the services must to have speed of 100, at least 100 megabit per second.
Oh, so it's technologically neutral.
Yeah, of course, technological neutral and open, and
okay.
This can be all be achieved with 5G fixed wireless access, even with the 4G fixed wireless access. So, as I said, it's a matter of awareness of the players to implement it.
Because when I'm not moderating roundtables, I work for digitalization of small and medium enterprises, and they're among those population which is hiding somewhere in the white spots as well, and it would help a lot also for them to reach the connectivity as soon as possible, so they can stay at home and work, so they don't have to move somewhere else to do their business. Yeah. Okay, and Boris, did you test your solutions as well in laboratories, or did you just go to the field and test them there, or how is your procedure of R&D?
Okay. Yes, before we go to the field, we always test the equipment and solution in laboratory. We spend also a lot of time to write the protocols for various cases and the scenarios that we have to detect and cover. What we did now for the smart city, we built the Lego city with consortium partner. Which is actually representing the solutions that we are building in Maribor. Everything is run on the 5G, at least what could cover, what could go on the 5G, because we have a problem with the Lego, because it's very small, you cannot build the real meters. This part is built with the cable, but everything else is running on 5G. It's very nice project that we had here. We used mostly younger engineers to build up their skills in programming and getting this, let's say, the knowledge of how the traffic is working, what needs to be done, covered, and so on. And it was actually quite good experience for us. And now, if you enter out in our headquarters, on the left side, we have really beautiful showroom. In this showroom, we have a Lego city big as almost this. So you're welcome to come and see what we are offering to people.
Okay, thank you. We will do some to relax after this presidency. I would now ask you all maybe for a few last words for our round table. Mr. Di Felice, what's your message for us?
I think the message is that, we see tremendous interest now finally developing around 5G and around the use cases. We see increasingly discussions between different parts of industry around the hardcore requirements and the deployment scenarios, which is something that we started to see at a theoretical level at the very early phases of development. Now it's about deployment. This is a very promising development. We're starting to see commercial deployment happening finally. I think this is the time to actually, understand the potential of the connectivity deployment that we still need to do in Europe, work together between, as I said, ICT, telecoms, and vertical industries to make sure that we use the business scenarios that we have to make sure that we use the money that is kindly given to us right now as part of the recovery funds, so that when we meet again in a couple of years, Europe is doing better. All the member states are starting to grow and stabilize their growth. And we have come out of the pandemic stronger as European industry and as European society.
Okay, thank you. If not in person, maybe in holograms.
I hope I will be. I was very jealous of all the people who could actually be there physically with you. I myself look forward to the first conference where I'll be physically present. And you're having a great time there in Ljubljana.
Yeah, that's true. Alexander, maybe a few last words.
I would say, technology is there. So we just need the speed to implement it and driving the ecosystem to build the use cases, because as I said also in the presentation, digitalization of companies is happening. They will not wait for 5G to happen. So here I would maybe mainly urge operators to start working on this ecosystem together with us, companies to present the potential so the technology can be implemented, because on slides is nice, but it needs to go to the field to be in real factories implemented, or in logistics, or in other industries, and bring the benefits that we are talking about. So all the key factors are there, but we need more action, more speed.
Muita.
It's very hard to add something additional thoughts. Maybe let's go and improve connectivity.
Okay, thank you. Boris, can I ask you for a few last words?
Yes, I really like this line. We need more speed. For the solutions that we are building, and we call them the solutions of the future, we need to find cohesion between ourselves actually as a case provider, and implementator, so on, and between all other elements, or let's say parts of the whole, so that all solution will be implemented and in use for the people. So we need all the speed.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you here. Hopefully there will be some consortiums out of this round table. I would be really glad. And maybe Muita now heard, and as well, Mr. Di Felice, you heard about the pains from the tenders. You can help a bit with debureaucratization of the tenders and getting funds. If not, at least you know about it. So thank you all for listening to us, and thank you, guests.
Thanks a lot.